Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another round of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship, or the NXTCC in short, for 2022, and today marks round 7 of the 10-round calendar that continues to ponder the question, who will be our champions both in the Drivers and the Teams Championships? For we have had so far 6 rounds of frantic racing action, and of course last time we were up in Scotland for the Knockhill circuit, and what a way to resume the series after the mid-season break, where as the case we saw plenty of racing action and also plenty of key battles playing out, and the drivers of the day, there were Team HSR who really took away the points on their home soil. But it is the case today, we're back in England for the Snetterton circuit, based in the east of England, and we'll talk more about it in detail shortly. It is the case that this circuit forms perhaps the longest circuit on our calendar, indeed the second longest circuit in the whole of the United Kingdom, with the fact our drivers will be taken to the 300 layouts of the circuit, running the full distance of a track length of 4.74 kilometres, or in terms of a conventional English, the mileage of the circuit there being over the best part of 2 miles, and you can imagine that our drivers will be eager to go battling here over the course of the multitude of corners available on circuit, and we've got an absolutely packed schedule as always. Now our schedule is a little bit later than the normal schedule tonight due to the fact that we've had some slight scheduling challenges, but we've worked through them, and it is the case we are here to all go racing once again. And let's take you through that schedule. Times in British Summer Time, that's BST, or Universal Coordinated Time UTC +1. It is the case that in just under 13 minutes time, just under 17 minutes time, we'll be going into our qualifying session, 15 minutes of qualifying to determine how our grid will line up for the purposes of race number 1. And then straight after that, we'll be transitioning over into the first sprint race of the evening, at approximately 8:30 this evening, and that will be 20 minutes of racing action. Indeed, when we say a sprint, there are no pit stops on the schedule for any of these races. It's the case the drivers will only be making their way to the pits should they be involved in an incident which leads to them picking up damage, or alternatively they pick up a drive-through penalty. But sprint race number 1 will start us off at what is 8:30 with the racing action, and after that we'll take a brief pause before returning for the commencement of race number 2, our second sprint race of the evening at approximately 9 o'clock tonight. Another 20-minute race, and when the dust settles there'll be another brief break before we go racing one last time for our final sprint race of the evening, sprint race number 3, and that will be at approximately 25 to 10. And it is the case we'll have 20 minutes of racing once more, and whilst all the races are the same in their duration, you can imagine as the evening goes on, of course, our drivers will be feeling the wear on themselves and the cars, and therefore those later races can feel a little bit longer, even though they're not actually. But in terms of the broadcast tonight, it's been brought to you live on iRacing, of course the premier sim racing platform which we host this series. It is the case being brought to you live on free media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, if you are a YouTube user, you can go to youtube.com and then search for NXTGEN Racing, and it is the case you'll be directed to the NXTGEN Racing YouTube channel and can tune in there. Alternatively, if you're more of a Facebook individual, you can go to the official NXTGEN Racing Facebook group, that is facebook.com/NXTGEN Official, and tune in there. Or last but not least, if you're more of a Twitch user, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX141 and tune in on Twitch. Now, who is TX141? Well, it is I, your host and commentator for this series, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain of Spit, and it's lovely to be back in the commentary booth, as always, to bring you all the racing action, as the story now really starts to evolve towards the ultimate crescendo in the last couple of rounds, and this being at round number 7. But speaking of the season and that evolution, let's take you through the calendar so far and what still lies in wait. Of course, this calendar being based on the official British Touring Car Championship calendar for 2022, albeit with some slight revisions where certain circuits are not available in iRacing, but let's give you a reminder. It's the case, of course, that it's the 22nd of September today, and we are at the Snetterton 300 circuit. But preceding all of that, we started the series on the 4th of August at Donington Park National. We kicked off there at the heart of British motorsport, and what a season opener it was. You remember none of our drivers were assigned to classes. It was the case that all of our drivers were not assigned to Pro or Pro-Am. They were only assigned to teams, and that meant everybody was competing for major points overall and within their eventually assigned classes. That was the case in round number 2. We made our initial visit to Brands Hatch, the circuit in Kent, and it is the case we visited the Indy variant, the shorter of the two main layouts of the Brands Hatch circuit, back on the 11th of August, and we saw there with the provisional assignment of driver classes how the battling intensified. Despite the circuit being one of the shortest on the calendar, it is the case that our drivers did not complain. They got their heads down and they battled hard throughout. Then for our third round, we made our way across the Atlantic Ocean up to Canada, and it is the case, whilst we would normally visit Thruxton if it was available in iRacing, which it's not, to replicate the full BTCC 2022 calendar, we decided to go to the closest equivalent, which is in Canada, and it is the case that the Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, or Mosport in short, provide us with that absolutely thrilling action with one of the highest average lap speeds of our circuits on the calendar. It was the case there. We saw plenty of great battles. We saw some very nasty moments as well, and everything in between, but that's the nature nature of Canadian Tire Motorsport, but much like Thruxton, it is the case they are circuits where you absolutely have to put your pedal to the metal, foot to the floor, and well, there can be some major incidents, but also some classic battles, and we've got plenty to reflect on. It was then the case in round number 4. We made our way back across the Atlantic Ocean to the United Kingdom for the Alton Park circuit, and that was on the 25th of August, and there we saw things cool down a little bit in terms of the speed, but we didn't see things cool down in terms of the overtakes, and we saw plenty of elbows coming out, with Alton Park perhaps being the hardest circuit to overtake at on our calendar. And then of course in round number 5 we saw that amplified when we made our way to the Dutch equivalent of Croft, because that's not available in iRacing. We went to the Zandvoort Grand Prix circuit on the 1st of September, and there we saw some absolutely phenomenal battles. Indeed, perhaps my highlight of the season so far, race number 3, despite the changes we had with connectivity issues with broadcast. Indeed, a number of drivers said there were a number of connectivity issues. It was the case that we had a 7-way fight to wrap up the first half of the season in race number 3 at Zandvoort Grand Prix, and I tell you, I still get flashbacks at it now. They're all positive. What brilliant battling there. We had our break week, and then we returned last week, of course, for the 15th of September at Knockhill, and there we saw the rise of Team HSR on home soil. It was the case with a balance of performance change on iRacing as well. We have seen the Hyundai Elantra does seem to be a little bit more in the zone now, and the complaints that we've been hearing from our Hyundai Elantra drivers with regards to the car not being in the zone when it's very high circuit temperatures, those concerns have been allayed to a degree, and it is the case the Elantra really is now coming on strong, and HSR really embodying the South Korean technology. But it's the case that all of our cars are still competitive, and we're going to see that today at Snetterton. But looking ahead, of course, after today, we make our quote-unquote second visit to Thruxton on the 29th of September at the Monza Grand Prix circuit. It is the case that we don't have Thruxton available. We decided to go for the Monza Grand Prix circuit, which is a parallel, if you will, in the fact that it's got one of the highest average lap speeds. In fact, I think it is the highest on paper average lap speed, and you can imagine that it's going to be all about the slipstream and also outbraking one another into the chicanes. Then for our penultimate round, we're making our way back to the United Kingdom from Italy to the Silverstone National Circuit on the 6th of October. A classic circuit there, maybe the shorter variant, but it is the case. There's going to be plenty of overtaking opportunities, as we have seen in the MX5 Cups from season to season. And then we'll be wrapping everything up on the 13th of October, coming back to Kent in the United Kingdom for the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. As is the tradition on the last couple of years of the British Touring Car Championship calendar, we go racing at the circuit, which runs all the way into the Kentish woodland and back to the main straight. And you can imagine that everybody will be gunning to complete their season on a high. Now, speaking of everybody, let's tell you a little bit about our drivers as they currently stand. Starting off with our top 20 overall championship standings. And you can see there, based on overall points accrual, it is the case that Jamie Dorey continues to lead with a margin that is gradually starting to stabilise, and that margin at the moment standing in the region of what is 56 points over Gavan Gardener. It is the case the next-gen racing driver of Dorey really has been the one to beat over the course of this season, but nobody can doubt that Gavan Gardener has been absolutely delivering for Verano Motorsport, and it's his teammate in P3, Chris Daines, who has been following him as well. And Chris Daines has had the upper hand on overall pace, but hasn't had the luck compared to his teammate, indeed a number of drivers, and was really muscled around, particularly at Knockhill last week. And it is the case that Chris Daines will be flying back tonight and looking to try and absolutely deliver. Knowing that he's still got an opportunity not just to take the overall championship, but also the Pro Championship. We'll talk more about that specifically shortly. The two Verano Motorsport drivers give haste and chase after Jamie Dorey, with John Higgins Junior and John Higgins Senior a little bit further behind. John Higgins Junior in P4 there only by 2 points. It is the case the younger member of the Higgins family for HSR really contesting that battle for the top 3, and then John Higgins Senior really coming alive over the last couple of rounds and is starting to break away from the rest of the field in that P5 position on 202 points. We can see there a further 14 behind Lee Horn. Don't forget about the pro driver of Lee Horn, a really strong driver. Doesn't have the pace in qualifying typically from what we've seen over the course of this season, but he has thrown in some curveballs for us, but it's in the races where he's really proven strong, and that P6 overall is deserved by him to date. Andrew Holmes, P7, battling for that P7 versus Ben Bennyworth, and Ben Bennyworth, the leading prime driver overall, and it is the case that his story has been one where he has been absolutely unstoppable over the last couple of rounds. Nobody's been able to contest him in the prime class, and we'll have to wait and see whether that continues, with Matthew Addy and Adam Delmont completing the top 10. Outside the overall top 10, we have Rob McGregor there, who returned Knockhill last week, and it is the case in what is that, P11 108 points. Looking to break away from Paul Scott, who's a further 6 points behind. Nigel Stott, Mikey Doble and John Burnham complete the top 15. And I'm very pleased to announce, ladies and gentlemen, that Mikey Doble is back at long last. It's the case. He's been away for a while, but he's all well and he's looking forward and absolutely eager to race tonight. And I can tell you there's quite a few trembles and shakes going down the paddock when they heard that Mikey Doble had arrived at the circuit, because we loved seeing him at Donington in the season opener. He had to miss a couple of rounds, of course, due to real life racing, and in personal circumstances has kept him away from going racing with us until now, but he is back full fever. He may not be able to win the championships, but you'll know one thing, he'll be going for every single result, because that's the way Doble does things. But then in P16, Mark Sykes there, ahead of Matt Emmons, David Whitehouse and Thomas Delaney and Tony Verschaft complete the top 20 overall. As we now come to the individual championships, we start with the Pro Drivers' Championship here, and it is the case that, speaking of pro points only, Jamie Dorey there leading at the moment by a margin of 24 points, but it is the case that John Higgins Junior is gradually bringing that lead down. It's almost like he's chopping a tree down, and he is gradually wearing it away at the base of Jamie Dorey's championship lead, because John Higgins Junior was on fire last time out at Knockhill, and if he can do that again tonight, he will close that gap up immensely. But it's not just about one member of the Higgins family, also John Higgins, or John Higgins Senior. It is the case there on 284 points, ahead of Gavan Gardener now by 4 points in the battle for P3. He'll be looking to try and break into that battle for the top 2 and put distance between himself and the Verano Motorsport pair of Gavan Gardener and Chris Daines. Now, of course, Chris Daines there in P5. We had the chance to talk to him in the post-round interview last time out at Knockhill, and it is the case that he knows, based on drop scores, that he is very close at this point in time to going hunting for the win in the Pro Championship. So let's not count him out, and indeed we don't factor in at the moment those drop scores. Will do that towards the end of the series from round 9 onwards, but you can imagine that Chris Daines right now all fired up and looking to turn around was a difficult day at Knockhill. Lee Horn ahead of Matthew Addy, P6, P7 there, the two separated by 24 points, with then Andrew Holmes a further margin behind of what is 51 points from P7 driver of Matthew Addy, and then Rob McGregor and Adam Delmont complete the top 10, with Mikey Doble and Tony Verschaft completing the rest of the Pro Championship standings. Coming to our Pro-Ams, meanwhile, it is the case there, confirming that Ben Bennyworth has really been on form over the last couple of rounds, and nobody seems to be able to stop him. Now, he didn't have the perfect round last time out at Knockhill, and when I say that, he didn't quite get the fastest lap in race number 3, and he didn't quite get the fastest lap in race number 1. Those accolades going to Paul Scott and Mark Sykes separately. But the thing about Ben Bennyworth is he picked up another triplet of wins. He's got a virtual trophy cabinet that's expanding round on round, and it is the case that Bennyworth does seem to be on form. Now, we don't quite know the permutations yet with regards to drop scores and whether Bennyworth can seal the championship with rounds to go. But given the margin right now has expanded to a margin of what is 74 points there when I do my maths correctly, it is the case that Paul Scott really needs to find a way to chop down the pace of Ben Bennyworth, because if he can't, then it is the case that Bennyworth is definitely looking on course to seal this championship up early. John Burnham, the best of the rest in P3 there, a further was 11 points ahead of Nigel Stott. The two of them trading blows and points, and we look forward to seeing them go racing again soon, albeit Nigel Stott will not be in attendance today due to personal circumstances, but he's doing well, and we look forward to seeing him return at Monza. Mark Sykes in P5 there, all fired up from what we're hearing down in the paddock, and then we have Matt Emmons, David Whitehouse, Thomas Delaney, Gaz Wheel, and Mark Arrowsmith completing the top 10, and outside the top 10 in our Pro-Am class, Michael Crees, Colin Martin, Josh Brown, and Jamie Jenkins. And then coming from our drivers, let's talk a little bit about the team's championship. It is the case that HSR, after their brilliant run of form last time out at Knockhill, have jumped into the lead of the standings on 479 points. They are now 11 points clear of NXTGEN Racing Orange. But of course, the trade-off is we've only seen Jamie Dorey take to the circuit for NXTGEN Racing Orange, whereas it is the case we have seen the full complement, the trio of Higgins Junior, Higgins Senior, and McGregor take to the circuit for HSR. That is going to change tonight. Now, we do not have Adam Delmont back in the mix at the moment. Unfortunately, he's not available at this time. But we do have Doble returning, so therefore you can imagine now with two of the NXTGEN Racing Orange drivers taken to the circuit, it may just even the score. Verano Motorsport, best of the rest in P3 there, a margin of 4 points ahead of NXTGEN Racing Green, with NXTGEN Racing Blue completing the top 5, and it's prime stacking with Solar Racing, who've gained significant ground on NXTGEN Racing Blue in P6, with Crest Autosport with Pebbles, and SVPMR with NXTGEN completing the team's championship standings. Now, as we look from our standings, let's talk a little bit about the circuit for today. Well, here's the case. We are at the 300 layout of the Snetterton circuit, based in Snetterton, near the village of Snetterton, in Norfolk, in England and the United Kingdom. It is the case that this circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided us by simracingwiki.com, is a circuit which is made up of both the infield and outfield sections of the Snetterton circuit. A little bit of history for you. This circuit is based on an original Royal Air Force airfield, which was utilised in the Second World War, and therefore, as you're going to see when we ride on board of our drives and from the exterior cameras, this circuit is very flat. There's not much of an elevation change, so if you're excited for more elevation changes or a roller coaster ride like Knockhill, this is not your circuit for that. However, what this circuit is good for is presenting great racing over the course of every lap and every corner. Because the lap is long, that means that our drivers are put to test in terms of their stamina lap in, lap out. But on top of that, the fact we have 13 corners in the run all the way from the start-finish line through Riches up into Wilson Corner, or used to be known as Montreal, but now known as Wilson, in memory of Justin Wilson, who passed away, unfortunately, in the 2010s. I believe it was in 2015 as part of IndyCar racing. But in this case, turn 2, the hairpin there, a great opportunity for overtaking. And then we have Palmer Corner at turn number 3, which runs into the infield section. Agostini, Hamilton, Oggies and Williams are the corners of turns 4 through to 8, and it is the case they're all very tight corners with major braking zones, and we'll be seeing our drivers try and contest. And as they exit out of Williams onto the Bentley straight, the back straight, they'll charge underneath the bridge in towards Brundle and Nelson turns 9 and 10, where we'll see some potential trail braking overtaking opportunities. And it's the run through Bombhole Corner at turn number 11, all the way round through Cormer turn 12, the long right-hander that never seems to end, and then a slam on the brakes at Murray's to do it all again out of turn number 13 and down the start-finish straight. But you can imagine 13 corners, most of them will see overtakes being made at them at some point, and 2 very long straightaways as well. We've got a little bit of everything. Now, as for our rules, it is the case these rules are the same as they've always been. This is a fixed setup series. It is the case our drivers are only allowed to tweak the brake bias on the car. In terms of the sprint races, how the grids will be set. The race 1 grid will, of course, be set based on the results of qualifying. The race 2 grid shall be set based on the results of race number 1. So whoever wins race 1, they start on pole for race number 2. Whoever comes last starts at the back of the field for race number 2. And the grid for race number 3 shall be a reverse grid based on the results of race 2, with the reversal position being drawn live from between 6th place and 12th place. It is the case. We'll cut over to the commentary booth and I'll do that live draw, and we're very hopeful we don't see 6th place come up again. It does seem to be the most common number at the moment, despite the fact that all odds are even in our lottery bowl. But it is the case that if we were to draw the number 10, for example, whoever finished 10th in race number 2 starts on pole for race number 3. Whoever finished the race as the winner in race number 2 will start in P10, and whoever finished P11, they'll be starting P11 in race number 3. And of course, a reminder that in terms of penalties, a driver shall receive a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 20 instant points or more. But that's enough rules and regulations and everything else in between. That will drive you insane if we've got any more rules and regulations. Let's head back to the circuit here, and it is the case our drivers make the way on around right now. In fact, most of them parked up in the pit lane, it would seem, given the fact they've had slightly longer to practice. They've had an extra 15 minutes to practice, given we've had a slight extension to our schedule tonight. We can see Jamie Dorey here, the overall and Pro Championship leader right now, parked up, and it is the case for him. He will need to do as best he can tonight, as we do see a cheeky Audi park in front of Jamie Dorey there. I think it's the case they may be aware they know they're on camera, and Jamie Dorey in return driving forward. Well, the cheekiness and the banter down the paddock, I can tell you, very strong amongst our drivers, and it is the case, and that absolutely lovely relationship and community at Next Gen Racing, which is what we love to see. And what we also love to see is the Scottishman of what is Robert McGregor here, charging on around the circuit right now for HSR. And well, he didn't have the perfect time at Knockhill. He talked about that on his post-round interview, with the fact he did feel as though things could have gone a bit better. But to be fair with McGregor, if there's one thing we do know about him, he is an honest assessor of his racing rounds, and you can imagine he'll be coming back tonight looking to perform even stronger than Knockhill. But here is the name we've all been looking forward to see return to the series as he makes his way around in the Honda Civic Type R. Mikey Doble here, and currently the fastest in this final practice session, half a second faster than anybody else. But of course, practice times are not a true indicator of how qualifying can go, because we don't know how much fuel's in the car, whether it's the case our drivers have been pushing or whatnot. But it is great to see the number 88 driver returning here, and from what I'm hearing, he is ready to pounce tonight, and he's going to need to be if he wants to work with his teammate of Dorey in order to get Next Gen Racing Orange edge, right back up there at the top of the standings, and also give himself the opportunity to charge after the top 5 come season's end. But as he makes his way around right now, we do look to our drivers in the Pro-Am class, and it is the case that currently our fastest driver in the Pro-Am class is Mark Sykes, albeit he's parked up there in the pit lane, and there he is, and currently just stationary at the moment. Indeed, most of them are, and Mark Sykes the fastest of our Pro-Ams, it would seem. But we looked at Benny Worth there a little bit further back in the black Audi RS3, the Pro-Am stacking with solo racing driver there in the 96 machine, and it will be on him tonight to continue that run of form and for everybody else to stop him. And can the Veloster, the Honda Veloster Mark Sykes, do so? Can Paul Scott find a way? Well, we haven't got Paul Scott in attendance at the moment from what I gather, so it may be the case that Paul Scott is not able to close that delta, and it would be a situation where Ben Bennyworth is given a free opportunity to extend that lead even further, or use this as a drop round if things don't go well. And we see Matt Emmons here. Great to see Matt Emmons out on circuit, running behind Jamie Dorey right now in the Next Gen Racing green machine, the Honda Civic Type R there. We've only got 10 seconds to go. In fact, we've got another, my apologies there. In this case, we do have another 5 minutes this practice session, so I think it's the case that we've been a little bit over-eager in extending that practice session all the way around, so the schedule will be a further 5 minutes behind beyond the already revised schedule, if you will. But as our drivers are making their way around right now, it is the case here. Being given a little bit of extra practice time, everybody almost set to go, and we've got plenty of racing to go as well. But speaking of those expecting racing, it is the case I can see a number of you there in the respective chats. We see there what is in the YouTube chat there of Don Tragic, and I hope you're doing well, Don, and well, thank you very much for the compliment there, and it's great to see you in the chat tuning on in. We also say hello in the YouTube chat there to John Higgins 01, saying gutted to be missing tonight, but good luck everyone. And I do believe that is John Higgins Junior, who, as he mentioned last time in his post-round interview, and absolutely ecstatic when he joined us for the interview, it was the case that he was saying that he's going on a holiday for this week, and I hope you're having a nice holiday, John, and you're able to put your feet up and rest. We also say hello there to Motorsport Magpie, also known as what is David Whitehouse, and it is the case there saying we're wishing everybody good luck in both the YouTube and the Twitch chat, and I hope you're doing well, Mr. Whitehouse, and all is good with yourself. We also see there John Burnham saying, I wanted to be ahead somehow, so I decided the pit box was the place. Well, I do love that, John, and that's absolutely brilliant as we see you parked there in the pit lane, and we look forward to seeing how you get on tonight. And it is the case we say hello, of course, to one of our regular attendees and fans, Katie Eames there in the Facebook chat. Hope you're doing well, Paul. I'm doing fantastic, thank you, Katie, and I hope you're doing well as well. It is the case, having attended EGX London earlier today, I did not want to miss coming back to cover this round of what was the NXTCC, and as a result, that's why we have had that slight pushback in regards to the schedule, and I'll put my hand up and take full responsibility for the pushback in the schedule, but at the same time, very kind of the organisers of Next Gen Racing to give me the opportunity to just have an extra few minutes to get home and get set up. But it is the case that we've got plenty of racing to come, and well, right now I think we're all chomping at the bit to see how it all unfolds. And just seeing there Katie also saying Gaz will be back next week in reference to Gaz Wheel. It's been a hectic couple of weeks with not enough practice, and then today is our little girl's third birthday, and Gaz's birthday is tomorrow. Well, happy birthday to your little girl, and well, if you would like a little shout out to them on the broadcast, Katie, feel free to pop their name in the chat and I'll say happy birthday to them. And well, wishing Gaz a happy birthday for tomorrow as well, and I hope he's doing okay. Indeed, Gaz Will, perhaps our ultimate rookie driver in terms of not quite on the pace of everyone and limited track time, but we have seen Will go from being approximately 5 to 4 seconds off the pace to about 2 seconds off the pace, and picking up some key points as well and giving himself a good opportunity in this series. But as our tries continue to flow on through here, it is the case 2.5 minutes left on the clock in this final practice session, and everybody right now getting themselves set up here. And I guess the big question that we might want to start asking ourselves is, what leads to a successful lap or a successful day at Snetterton? Well, the key thing you've got to focus on around here, this circuit does not have one particular trait to it, other than it's a flat circuit. So, what we mean by that is, the corners around here are very varied. We have hairpins, we have medium speed sweepers, we have high speed corners, we have extended corners, we have late apexes. We don't have a chicane, interestingly enough. That's one thing that we can point out that we don't have. But given the fact we have most, if not everything, it is the case that our drives will be put to the test here, and it's as a result a need to feel comfortable. But also on top of that, there are some key areas around the lap where drives will need to nail the corners more than everything else. And for example, you've seen it here as Matt Emmons makes his way out of Williams corner at turn number number 8. It's a critical corner because if you can carry more and more speed through corner apex and on exit, it is the case you'll gain about 2 to 3 to 5 miles an hour in the run down the Bentley Straight all the way up towards turns 9 and 10 into Brundle and Nelson. So that's the big focus, is the fact that if you're able to carry the speed out of the corner, it gives you that edge in the run towards 2 very tricky corners at turns 9 and 10. And as Evans makes his way into bomb hole corner now, it is the case, in reference of course to a bomb hole where a bomb was dropped at Snetterton Airfield, it is the case that corner there is perhaps the ultimate elevation change because it is a major dip in the corner and our drivers charge on out of it. Now on top of that as well, some other key areas. The exit at turn number 13 is a critical one. My drivers want to get back on the throttle as soon as possible to charge up towards turn 1, down the centre straight into Rich's corner. But beyond that, it's more about finding your flow here, much like at Knockhill, interesting enough. But the difference is Knockhill's flow is about managing those undulations, those elevation changes and those raised curves. Whereas here, we don't really have too many raised curves. We do have a couple of sausage curves on the critical corners, such as, for example, at turn number 10 and also turn number 13 to prevent drivers from cutting the corner too aggressively. But beyond that, most of the curbing around here is relatively flat, which means our drivers can use the curbing to their advantage, and they can also afford to be a little bit more aggressive in their approach. So that will mean we're not expecting the Hyundai Elantra, for example, to be able to show its power with regards to running over those high curves compared to every other car, because really here we don't have any major high curves which can be exploited, and therefore it should level the field a little bit in terms of the fact that it's all about the drivers and getting those machines to their mastery. But as the checker flag now waves on this final practice session, it is the case here. We see Lee Horner heading down underneath the bridge, which is used for spectators to be able to drive into the infield and therefore park up to watch racing. It is the case now. We head into the qualifying session, and well, how will everybody get on? Only time will tell, as immediately everybody's making their way out of the pit lane. It's 15 minutes of qualifying here at Snetterton, and who will come out on top? Let's find out. Jamie Dorey makes his way out, and indeed John Burnham as well. Our drivers are creeping out in towards what is the first corner here. We are expecting our drivers to potentially try and utilise the tow off of one another. It is the case you can benefit quite sizably from a tow, particularly down the back straight and also on start-finish straight to a respective degree. But it's also in the infield section. We do have a number of short runs to run from West Palmer Corner at turn 3. And towards Agostini at turn number 4, there's a short run, but even there, if you can gain about 1 mile an hour, it will help you just a little bit extra. But of course, the downside when you're running in the draft is the fact you have to be aware if you close up too much to the driver in front, you may just end up having to abort your lap, alternatively back your lap off behind the driver in front, because they're on a fast lap and you take them out and impede their lap, well, the stewards are not going to be too best pleased if it does get reported. But as we see Gavan Gardener making his way down here, flashing his lights up, I think that's both to say thank you to what is there, Mark Arrowsmith, and also perhaps he knows he's on camera there in the number 11 car. Of course, the distinctive Rhino Motorsport machine, and we can tell Gardner's behind the wheel because it is running the pink-purple rims compared to Chris Daines' machine. And speaking of Chris Daines, summon the man and he shall arrive. It is the case here. Daines in the 111 car making his way around in qualifying right now, made his way into the pit lane in the final minutes of what was the final practice session, and we're very happy to see the Audi RS3 driver from Rhino Motorsport heading on around, as we do see that it does look as though Matthew Addy getting it slightly wrong on the exit of what was Hamilton Corner, named after, of course, Lewis Hamilton, the Formula 1 driver with the 7 world titles. And indeed, as our drivers make the way on around right now, we do look to Jamie Dorey here, who will be our first driver to make his way across the timeline to go onto a flying lap as we understand it, and we'll ride on board with him very shortly to give you a perspective of what it's like to do a lap in the touring car racing class car here at the Snetterton 300. And as he rolls his way through Coram Corner at turn number 12 here, heading into 13, let's ride on board and see how he gets on. He's on his way out of the corner here, getting a nice smooth exit and charging up towards turn number 1. As he heads on through here, we clear the information off screen and just keep the track map up for you. And as he rolls his way into turn 1, it is the case going onto the brakes very shortly, looking to his left there for the 50-meter board as he breaks down the gearbox to 4th gear. Double apex in here, creeping out from the initial apex, then back to the second apex to the right-hander, now heading down towards turn number 2. Breaking into Wilson, braking at around 65 to 70 metres, going all the way down the gearbox to 1st gear and exiting out now, using a little bit of the runoff space on the left-hand side afforded before charging up the gearbox to 4th gear. And into Palmer Corner, no real brake markers here, you've got to go on gut feel, and braking about 55 metres from corner entry, it is the case that in 3rd gear he flows on through, uses the runoff curve into his effect, and now making his way down towards Agostini. Turn number 4 here, and braking around the 50-metre board once again, and heavy on the brakes, and trailing off 1st gear at the slowest corner on the circuit. And as he makes his way out now up through the gearbox once again, will he just lift for the purposes of Hamilton? little dab of the brakes there in third gear, and also a lift off before rolling the car out to Hamilton Corner and now up into Oggies at turn 6 and 7. You've got to nail this apex as late as possible, or in FF cars, in this case, nail it as early as possible. Get back on the throttle through turn 7, bring it over to left for turn 8 at Williams Corner, and as he rolls his way through the right-hander here, it is the case, doesn't quite get on the throttle as comfortably as he would have liked there, a little bit of delay on the throttle, but still a nice line out, and now down the back straight he goes, and as he charges all the way down towards what is turns 9 and 10, in towards that braking zone, it's going to be a trail brake all the way through 9, on the brakes he goes, and then stamping on the brakes here for turn number 10, down to second gear, and immediately as soon as he clears the apex, he'll want to get on throttle, but carried a bit too much speed there, and as a result, understeered wide and brought it back to the circuit nicely as he comes through Bombhole Corner, turn number 11, and now into Coram at turn number 12. Now, where can you see the apex? Wait for it, wait for it, wait for it, and there's the apex. That's how long Coram is, and as he brings the car over to the right-hand side here, having to bounce between third and fourth gear, down the gearbox to second gear, through the final corner here, and as he exits on out, it is the case. That's a lap of the Snetterton circuit. Not a perfect lap, to be fair, from Jamie Dorey, but also getting his eye in right now in this qualifying session. He's still got plenty of time to go as he charges on down towards turn number 1, and his initial marker set will be a 2:06.76, and who will be able to respond to that? Who can outdo it, and who will come close to it? We see Mikey Dover immediately going almost half a second faster on his initial flying lap as our drivers make the way on around, and John Burnham, by comparison, a 2:05, but I don't think that's an indicative lap, to be fair, and I think there might have been a couple of mistakes, alternatively backing offs on the course of that lap from our Pro-Am driver, so we are waiting for more Pro-Am times to come in. Speaking of one, I do believe Mark Sykes is coming across the line. He was fast in practice, and how does he do in his first qualifying lap here? It's because he crosses that line. I don't think that lap's been counted in the fact that our time screen has not been updated, so I think there was a track limit invalidation, and therefore it is the case we will not be seeing a lap initially set from Mark Sykes as he goes again. Now, as he rolls away through, we see Ben Bennyworth here, yet to set time in the Audi RS3, but keying himself up. And we do see there in the YouTube chat, Mac, that's Rob McGregor saying no qualifying for Rob, and we should have pointed out, I do believe, correct me if I'm wrong here, Rob, you'll know best, of course, as you're not taking part in qualifying, but I do believe you've got a qualifying ban based on some of the instance from the Knockhill race, and therefore that's why you're required to sit qualifying out, but I'm not 100% sure, but do feel free to confirm there in the YouTube chat. And we see K Teams there cheering on the NXTGEN Racing Team green outfit, and wishing them good luck in the Facebook chat. But indeed, if you tune in right now, don't be shy, feel free to say hi, even if it's the case that you don't normally do so. We don't buy it here on the broadcast or at NXTGEN Racing, we're a friendly bunch, and it is the case the more the merrier in the chat. And if you can't speak in the chat because you don't have the ability to do so due to technical limitations or whatnot, then don't worry, I wish you well, and I hope you're having a great week. Friday's around the corner tomorrow and the weekend ahead, but our drivers won't be thinking about that, we'll be thinking about the corners ahead, as we see Bennyworth here flying his way through Coram, and as he rolls his way on out here, it is the case, flying on through, goes a little bit deep there, a bit of understeer creeping on the front end of the car, and as he heads into left hand here of turn number 13, and we'll stick with the numerical numbers for the corners here, just to make things a little bit more straightforward for everyone. It is the case that right now, Bennyworth heading across that timeline, and looking good as he crosses on through, and what we can see, it is the case here from Burnham and Bennyworth. Well, Burnham does improve, and then Bennyworth takes Pro-Am pole out on a 2:01.574, and that is a very strong lap to set a marker. As we see, Matthew Addy jumps up to P2, Chris Daines jumps up to P3, Gardener jumps up to P5, so Bennyworth being demoted to a degree, but it is the case there, Bennyworth definitely setting the pace in the Pro-Am class. Now, you will have heard me earlier say that certain corners around here you want to try and go for late apexes if you're in a front-engine rear-wheel drive car, but if you're in a front-engine front-wheel drive car, which all of these touring car racing class cars are, you want to go for an earlier apex, particularly in the run through what is Oggies into Williams. Now, you may be wondering, why is that? Well, do keep in mind that when a car is front-engine front-wheel drive, it is the case that the front wheels do all the work. So it is the case when we say they are front-wheel drive, the front wheels will have all the drive power from the engine delivered to them, so they're the ones that deliver the power to the tarmac, and the rear wheels follow suit. And it is the case that the front wheels naturally do the turning, or the turning into the corners, we should say. Put the two and two together, what that means is you ideally in these touring car racing class cars want to achieve an early apex, so that way then you can get on the power as you clear that apex and power out to the corner. Meanwhile, if the car's got rear wheel drive by comparison, which you won't see here, it is the case the rear wheels have got the power deployments. The idea is you want to bring the car to a late apex, so you've brought the rear through the corner, and then you can straight line out and put the throttle down. And as they make their way all the way out towards turns 9 and 10, 10 once again, and lovely shot there in terms of all 4 cars in long sequence. It is the case that Matthew Addy right now P2, and he's in the draft there, and I do believe he has the draft of what is one of the Elantras in particular, and I believe that's Andrew Holmes in front of him there, as we do see Chris Daines behind, a little bit impeded here, Chris Daines, and I think he might have just mistimed this one a little bit in getting so close, but as he heads on through, here's goes that Jamie Dorey crosses that timeline, and did he improve on that lap? I don't think Dorey did, but Mikey Doble does improve. He's currently provisional pole, and he's raised the bar of that provisional pole to a 58.969. My goodness, well, if he wanted to put this qualifying session to bed, I think he's already doing that, and we're only halfway through with just over 6 minutes plus the final laps remaining. But Andrew Holmes jumps up to P2 temporarily, then Daines and Addy come up to P2 and P3 respectively. But I wonder if Chris Daines feels so he might have been a bit impeded towards the end of that lap, despite having the draft of what was Matthew Addy there. He's 3/10 off right now, and I would not be surprised if Chris Daines, if he can put a little bit of space between himself and Addy but keep that toe, there's no reason why he can't get that margin down, if not try to say that he's taken the pole position instead. But meanwhile, in other developments, we do have Matt Evans here. He's taken P6 overall, and that is pole right now in the Prime class in provisional pole. It is the case we've still got a lot of unpredictability in this qualifying session, and that's absolutely brilliant to hear, of course, as they make the way through. And as they do, we do have John Higgins Senior here out on circuit. And of course, Higgins Senior did say they'd be taking to the circuit alongside teammate Rob McGregor in the absence of Junior. We see they're really missing it and wishing good luck to his teammates there in the YouTube chat. But as we do see Higgins Senior, or John Higgins as he's also known, rolling his way into Agostini, is currently on a flying lap. His first flying lap of this session. The first couple of laps have not gone his way and really been out laps or warm-up laps. He's only got 5 minutes left, and well, track position here is quite critical if you want a smooth start to the race. It is the case, of course, that we have standing starts in this series, much like real world touring car, but you can imagine whilst overtaking is possible here, overtaking costs a lot of time, and overtakes have to be made quite boldly. So therefore you want to start further up the field, so that way the less overtakes you have to make, and therefore the less time you lose on the leaders, who would naturally disappear off into the distance. But as Higgins Senior here makes his way all the way up towards turns 9 and 10, it is the case we do see Mark Sykes there also just being out of the draft of another driver. We hear that Jamie Dorey has gone up to P3. Mikey Doble has increased the bar to a 58.906. That's only a couple hundredths more, but to be fair, he's taken every hundredth he can around here, as we do watch John Higgins Senior flying his way on through the bomb hole corner of turn number 11, and up into 12 he goes. And as he rolls his way through the right-hander here, it is the case the number 60 driver looking comfortable so far, but as he comes down into the braking zone very shortly for 13 to complete the lap. This will be his first lap. I do believe he's just about kept on circuit, although that might have been invalidation literally at the final hurdle on the exit of 13. And as he makes his way up towards turn number 1, will it be a qualified time here, or will he have to go again? I do think it's not a valid time due to that slight runoff at the very end, and that's going to be a bit of frustration potentially. But meanwhile, I can see one driver who's not frustrated, and that is Ben Bennyworth. Or is he, given the fact he's not having pole position come his way naturally right now, and he's got to find a little bit more time. And in terms of the run of form we're expecting here today, based on what we've been hearing about the balance performance changes with the cars, it is the case we are expecting the Honda Civic in particular to be the strongest over one lap here, and potentially the strongest in terms of pace. Now, the reason we say that is because the Civic's got very strong brakes by default, but it has been a reimagined car since the recent balance performance update. It's got a bit more straight line speed now compared to what it used to have. That used to be its ultimate weak point, if you will, is the fact it had no straight line speed or indeed straight line acceleration beyond the first through to third gear. But the Honda definitely now has a lot more acceleration under the hood, and that put together with the fact it's got natural cornering capabilities makes it an ideal fit here, because we're not going to really see our drivers reach top gear for too long, and that's where the Audi RS3 would come on strong with regards to straight line speed. As we see here, what is Ben Bennyworth flying on through, but meanwhile we look from him to Mikey Doble. I do believe has a driver behind him, and is that Jamie Dorey just behind. Indeed, they're running together. The two teammates here are going to try and work together in order to improve Jamie Dorey's lap, I would imagine. Meanwhile, we do cut back to Ben Bennyworth as he comes out the final corner, and in fact, we're going to ride on board here with Ben Bennyworth as he takes us on to another flying lap. And let's give you the perspective of the Audi RS3 lap. It's making its way up towards turn number 1, then not impeded by the traffic coming out to the pit lane, and braking at 55 metres into turn number 1. A bit of understeer creeping in, but he hooks it back up very nicely to the second apex. Well caught there by Bennyworth as he breaks his way down into turn number 2. Braking at about 60 metres there and goes for a very deep run through the corner, which you can do to be fair, but that's normally more for racing than qualifying, and that's going to cost him a couple of attempts. He makes his way up towards turn number 3. And as he rolls his way through the left hand here, it is the case that Bennyworth flows on out, hooks it up well, now heading down towards 4, but I get the feeling he might be backing off here, given the fact he peeled over to F. No, he's staying on the lap in fact, and as he breaks his way down into turn number 4 here, it is the case going a bit deep and deciding to go for a later apex here to be able to deploy the Audi's power as he makes his way up into turn 5, running his way into left-hander heading and lifting off the throttle and the dab of the brake, but staying in 4th gear, and as he makes his way into Oggies, it is the case having to stay in 4th initially and braking down to further and very early apex, and that's the sort of apex you want. You want to get so early on that apex curve so you can power out of it, and now into turn number 8 as he rolls his way through the right-hander here, it is the case now charging all the way down towards turns 9 and 10 down the Bentley straight, and as he makes his way on down here, this hasn't been too bad of a lap so far for Ben Bennyworth, albeit not improved sector 1. We'll wait to see what sector 2 looks like. Sector 2 is improved, but now can he improve in sector 3 to deliver a better lap that gets him closer to Emmons, who is half a second faster right now with only a minute left on the clock. But he makes his way through 9 and 10 absolutely smoothly into 11. He rolls. And just lift off the throttle there. No need to brake into turn number 11. You just lift off the throttle, turn in, and get back on the power when you're ready. And as he makes his way through turn number 12, hit the long corner, and a lot of understeer creep on the car. And I think this is where the lap time's being lost, but he brings it back just in time for 13. Takes a bit of the apex curve there, which unsettles the car. But to be fair, the Audi can take those sausage curves on a single wheel quite nicely. And as he makes his way to the timeline here, can Bennyworth move closer to Emmons in the standings as he crosses the line? What's it going to be? It is the case there. The time comes in, and it is an improvement to a 201.062, but he is still 4 tenths off of the provisional pole lap in the Prime class set by Matt Emmons. John Burnham also improves, and now he's only half a tenth off of Bennyworth, and gets it wrong coming out of turn 1. But thankfully for him, he can take to the grass there. There's no barrier, and that means he can rejoin if needed. But the checkered flag is out in this qualifying session, and now we've only got a couple more times to come through, including John Higgins Senior here, who's been struggling to set times. He comes across the line, he's going to have to make do. I don't think it's an improvement compared to his previous best. So at best, he'll be starting P12 overall. That's not the way he's wanted this qualifying session to go. Meanwhile, we look a little bit further around the field. It is the case that we do have, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, Matthew Addy next up to come on through, as we do see here the number 57 driver rolling his way out the final corner. Will he be able to improve from P6? No, he makes his way into the pit lane. He's decided enough's enough, but he's still got plenty of drivers out there setting laps right now. It is the case our next driver is Mikey Doble, and as Doble heads on down the back straight here, where it is the case, you can see Jamie Dorey trying to hang with him there to get a distant tow. But I think Doble's broken away, and in fact, both of them not improving at all in sectors 1 and 2 here, so it may be the case that this is more just another reference lap to get themselves fully sighted in for the purposes of going racing, because I would imagine that right now they're probably not going to improve any further. Oh, Doble taking a bit of grass there, and the car almost getting pinned on the outside of the circuit, but just about bringing it back on and releasing it from the grass as he makes his way through 12 up towards 13, onto the brakes he flows, and as he does here, I would imagine he's most likely going to peel into the pits, or is he going to stay on out? He does make his way to the timeline here, but this is not going to be an improvement based on the form we've seen over this lap as he crosses the line. What about Jamie Dorey as well? Dorey does improve in the final sector, and well, it is an improvement from Jamie Dorey. It's P3 still at 59.494, and now is his marker. What about Chris Daines, who's heading towards the end of his lap? Well, Daines was faster in sector 1, a personal best. Sector 2, not quite matching his previous best, but close to it. What about the final sector here? Can he find a way to get himself onto that front row and separate the next gen racing orange drivers, or is it too much of a task for the runner motorsport drivers? He comes to the line here, he crosses the line, and what's it going to be? It is, in the end, well, in fact, he's going to be P2, and it's a 59.014. Meanwhile, that's qualifying complete, ladies and gentlemen. So your grid will be Mikey Doble on pole, ahead of Chris Daines, who will join him on that front row, and Jamie Dorey P3 with Andrew Holmes alongside. And meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class, it is Matt Emmons, who has taken pole position in the Pro-Am class with Ben Bennyworth behind him in P8 there. there for Matt Emmons. A great start to his qualifying session. Indeed, his race day overall, and Ben Bennyworth not too far behind, so I don't think he'll be too flabbergasted by that one. But as we now wait for the transition over to the formation of the grid for race number 1, any surprises there? Well, of course, we did not see Rob McGregor qualify, and I believe that is due to a qualifying penalty that's been accrued from the previous round, and also Tom Delaney not taking to the field. I'm not 100% sure the circumstances of that, but also whilst Mark Sykes did look very strong in practice, in this case not quite hooking up the lap in qualifying, it would seem. Only P11 or P4 in the Pro-Am class for him, but I can imagine he's got more pace under the hood in the race than the Veloster compared to it in the qualifying session. We know that Veloster is a very strong car as the race goes on, much like what is the Honda Civic Type R. As we see there, Delaney is promoted briefly, but with that, let's take you through the grid for race number 1. This is how they line up then for race 1 of round 7 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship here today at Snetterton. Mikey Doble takes pole position by 3 tenths over Chris Daines. Next Gen Racing Orange driver outdoing the Runner Motorsport driver on his return to the series. Jamie Dorey lines up on our second row, joined by Andrew Holmes there, and then Gavan Gardener and Matthew Addy make up row number 3, with the Next Gen Racing green driver keeping it close to Gavan Gardener, only half a tenth, or in fact just over half a tenth separating the two of them. Lee Horn starts off row number 4 for Next Gen Racing green, with his teammate Matt Emmons starting alongside him, our Pro-Am pole sitter in P8 there. And then we do have Ben Bennyworth, who starts off row number 5 for Prime Stacking with Solo Racing, joined by his teammate John Burnham in P10. Behind them, we have Mark Sykes and John Higgins Senior. They make up row number 6. And then on our last couple of rows, it is Josh Brown and Mark Arrowsmith on what is row number 7, the 2 Pro-Am drivers there. And then we have Rob McGregor and Tom Delaney. They will start off our final row together in what is P15, P16. But as we look to the front of the field here, all eyes are, of course, on the returning charging pro of Mikey Doble. We do still have just over 40 seconds before we're due to get the lights out and away here. But the key point is that right now, can Doble deliver on his return? Can he find the pace that he left behind Donington all those weeks ago? We're thinking yes, he can, given the qualifying session. But this man alongside him, Chris Daines, knows that he needs to win. He's out-qualified Jamie Dorey, and if he can pick up multiple wins tonight, he can keep himself well in the hunt alongside his teammate Gavan Gardener, who starts P5 for the overall and the Pro Championship. And Andrew Holmes, how can he fit into the mix, given the fact that Holmes, we have seen at certain rounds, has been the stronger driver of the group. At others, he's not quite had the pace. Well, we'll have to wait and see. And Ben Bennyworth, of course, Pro-Am leader going into tonight. He'll still be Pro-Am leader coming out of tonight, but how can he get on? But now we wait for the lights. There's 1 red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go for race number 1 here at Snetterton, as Mikey Doble gets a relatively good start, but Chris Daines gets a good start as well as they charge up towards turn number 1 for the first time. And as they make their way into the right hand here, it is the case that Doble holds the inside versus Daines. He's going to try and hook it round the outside early here. He sets himself up well for the charge down towards turn number 2. And as they make their way into the braking zone here, Doble having to defend, as we do see Matt Emmons off circuit briefly. And meanwhile, cut the inside like a missile. That's Lee Horn coming in very hot and clipping the side of both Jamie Dorey and Matthew Addy, and that's going to upset the balance of the trio there as they make their way into turn number 3. As you can see here, Matthew Addy having to defend on the inside versus Lee Horn. There is the case, the 2 Next Gen Racing drivers here showing that no love's lost between them as they make their way out of the corner and off circuit. That's Matt Emmons, who right now, after gaining some places, will lose the lead to the Pro-Am class here to Ben Bennyworth or Willie as they break their way down into turn number 4. Bennyworth on the inside, meanwhile Emmons trying to go around the outside. We've got a car locking up very heavily. That's Lee Horn with a major lock up on the brakes, and that's going to lead to 3 wide as they head up in towards Hamilton, but I'm sure they're going to sort things out rather rapidly as they make their way on through. We can see Mark Sykes gaining through all of this, coming on through as Emmons off again and rejoin on the inside. Oh, goodness me, Emmons rejoins and takes 3 drivers with him, including himself, and that is Sykes, but also I do believe there what is Lee Horn all being clipped together, and that is unfortunate. Lee Horn returns to the circuit, but we can see there that Sykes is having to go from good to disastrous for a brief moment, and Emmons getting it wrong on the rejoin. But as they make their way down the back straight, now we look back to our leaders, and Mikey Doble holds on to lead despite the hot contest from Chris Daines earlier on. And I think it is the case that Mikey Doble has passed the test in terms of feeling that pressure as they make the way through 10 and 11 and very shortly into turn number 12. But as they roll the way on through, it is the case Doble holds on for now with Chris Daines behind. rolling up towards turn number 13 and towards the end of the lap. But you can see a bit further back here, Andrew Holmes, where he's lost one place since the start, but he's looking very feisty indeed as he goes hunting after Matthew Addy. As meanwhile, on the rear of the picture, that's Ben Bennyworth getting it wrong. And meanwhile, Gavan Gardener on the outside there, being squeezed off a little bit. And I think just outbraked himself into the corner as well. But Ben Bennyworth almost losing it as they make the way past the standing camera. There is Mikey Doble, who leads ahead of Chris Daines as they go on to lap number 2. Then Jamie Dorey in 3rd place as they roll the way into turn number 1 with Matthew Addy in 4th, followed by Andrew Holmes 5th. Gavan Gardener P6. Those are pro drives. Then we have our prime leader Ben Bennyworth in P7, ahead of John Burnham in P8, followed by Mark Harris with P9. Josh Brown on his return to the series. Oh, he gets it wrong coming out of the final corner and points the car in the wrong direction. And you see evasive manoeuvres being taken by Lee Horn there, and it's great to see the JBW Racing driver return, but not like that as he rejoins. And it is the case that now down to P14 in his space. And you can see here that Mark Harris with going hunting after John Burnham. What's happened to John Burnham? We're not sure. He's got it wrong coming out of what was turn number 2. That's for certain, as it's the case that Aaron Smith, who was a little bit further behind, is now right up there in the battle here as they battle for P2 in the Brown class, and are letting Ben Bennyworth get on with business up front. But as they make the way through the left-hand hairpin here, you can see that it is the case that Aaron Smith ahead as we ride on board the gearbox here of the Crest Autosport with Pebble Shriver running away, or trying to, from Burnham, but I don't think Burnham's going to let it go that easily. And I was just about to say, it's great to see that we do have returning tonight Josh Brown after quite a hiatus from the series, but at the same time, I think it's the commentator's curse being applied to him because he was running in P10 and now he's dropped all the way down to P14 after a brief mistake at turn number 1, and we'll get an eye of what that mistake was very shortly as we see Aaron Smith breaking away from Burnham already as they head down towards turns 9 and 10. But as they do, it is the case, we can see a little bit further back there in P11 Lee Horn not having a successful start to this race, it should be said, and with some of that of his own doing, some of that of his rivals doing as he makes his way down to 9 and 10, but definitely had the confidence to go on the offensive into turn number 2. I think a little bit too hot for measure there and losing out. Meanwhile, having started from the back of the field, not permitted to take part in qualifying, as we hear that Matt Emmons is off there at turn number 10. Something's gone very wrong for him, but we do see Rob McGregor here making his way on around. He's already up into P12 and he's gained 4 places since the start, but still plenty more places to gain as he pushes on round through 12 and up into 13. But as he does, we look from him to Jamie Dorey here, who is battling with Matthew Addy as they go on to another lap. And it's Addy up the inside here into turn number 1, followed by Dorey around the outside, and Andrew Holmes just behind as they roll the way down to 2. We ride on board here. Andrew Holmes is going to try and look to go around the outside of Matthew Addy into the corner, but to be fair, Addy's going to have the defensive line as he rolls his way beyond the apex. And as they come on out here, you can see that Holmes not giving this one up, trying to use the Elantra, which has got a little bit more speed on the straight by comparison with the Honda Suit. We know it's got the better pace at the start of the races once its tyres are up to temperature, but it wears those tyres down aggressively over race distance. He gets a good run out of turn number 3, heads up towards 4 here, looking up the inside on the brakes he goes, and as they head into the brakes, there's a bit of contact between the two of them. Andrew Holmes gets ahead, forces his way out the inside there, and Matthew Addy has not got a response right now, though he takes a peek there into turn number 5. He looks the inside, then in the end Andrew Holmes holds him at bay as they make the way through 5 and up into 6 as they roll the way into turns at 6 and 7 now. It is the case that Andrew Holmes definitely looking to go on the offensive, and Gavan Gardener behind here, where it is the case losing 1 place at the start of the race and just watching on in the meantime as they roll the way through turn 8 and down the back straight once again. But as they head on through, it is the case whilst they're all battling for P3 up front, we can see here Mikey Doble, despite getting a good start versus Chris Daines, it is the case that Chris Daines is with him now, and Daines does look to be comfortable now. Of course, Daines did mention to us at Knockhill about the fact that Audi does suffer from overheating when it's in the draft of another car, given the fact that those temperatures just continue to go up and up and up. It's a relatively cool day here today at Snetterton, and perhaps it's the case that Daines is able to push the car a little bit more, but you can imagine he won't want to be stuck in that draft for long. He'll want to try and get ahead as soon as possible as they make the way out to turn number 13 and down towards another lap very shortly as they make the way past the stationary camera here. Wonderful shot. You can see them all making their way away from the final corner and heading up towards turn number 1 shortly, and as we see Doble and Daines are leading the way on through, we can see the pursuit for what is P3 continues on to another lap, but Chris Daines sets the fastest lap of the race that time around at 59.406. It is the case he is looking to try and edge the gap on Mikey Doble. Meanwhile, in the Pro-Am class here, we do see it is the case that Ben Bennyworth continues to lead the class now by a margin of 4 seconds over Mark Arrowsmith as he makes his way into turn number 2. And here is Arrowsmith by comparison, who's having to hold off John Burnham behind as they make the way through turn 2 and onwards towards 3 very shortly. And Burnham definitely now starting to up the pace a little bit as they make their way deeper and deeper into this race, rolling the way on through into 3. And behind Lee Horn, after a difficult start, is now trying to make that recovery drive, but he does have a long way to go if he wants to get into that top 6 fight in the Pro class. As he makes his way up towards turn number 4 right now. These drivers in sequence, it is a case here, all abiding their time and just digging into the race pace. We look back up to Matthew Addy here, who after really being contested by Andrew Holmes, in fact Andrew Holmes finds his way on through, of course, on the last lap at turn number 4. You see Holmes has broken away, and now Addy looking a little bit vulnerable to Gavan Gardener behind as they make the way through turn number 8. And we look to the blimp camera here, of course, getting to see our drivers make their way up to speed in the long charge down, and Gavan Gardener getting closer and closer in the run up towards turns 9 and 10. And can Gardener look for the move this time? He's thinking about it, but that's going to need him to be very bold on the brakes into 9 and 10 if he's going to get it done, because it is a trail braking corner, no way through. But as we come back down to the closer pictures, and in particular right on board the gyro inside Gavan Gardener's cockpit here, it is the case. You can see he's definitely pushing right now, the Audi Sport Customer Racing Verano Motorsport driver, as he rolls his way in towards turn number 13. Shortly through 12 he goes, but he is right now feeling the need to put that pressure on for P5 as we see Addy there slightly squirming under braking to turn number 13. I think it might be the case, just starting to feel a little bit of pressure from behind from Gardner as they make their way onto another lap very shortly. Meanwhile, in terms of the laps up front, Mikey Dobbs just set the fastest lap of the race of 59.192, responding to Chris Daines on the previous lap. In this case, the top 2 breaking away from the rest of the field by half a second a lap. As they make the way on around here, we look a bit further back to Lee Horn versus John Burnham, as we see Lee Horn on the right, John Burnham on the left. And as they make their way into turn number 1 here, Lee Horn going all the way around the outside and hooking it up very nicely. Lee Horn's definitely got the pace hooked up here. It's the case this race just has not started out the way he's wanted it to, and therefore that's where the challenge lies in terms of trying to now find that pace once again. But we do take a look back to Josh Brown here in his P number 14, and in particular that incident he had earlier on, which saw him drop down the field. We finally got the replay footage for it, and here it is. Well, it is the case. In fact, we jumped a little bit ahead there, so we do take a look further back, and it was the case the car sliding away from him as he made his way into turn number 1 and then trying to bring the car back on around. And it was the case of the JBW Racing driver just not able to have that hooked up turn number 1, and it's cost him so very dear. But as we return to the live pictures right now, Brown getting his head back down here, and I think just trying to get to the end of this race to make sure he gets the points and gets himself on the grid for race number 2. But meanwhile, we look from towards the back of the field up towards the front of the field, and I can tell you that Delaney had to retire right at the start of the race due to technical issues with the car, and Mark Sykes is in the pit lane after the damage that was picked up on the opening laps in that freeway incident between himself, Matt Emmons, and also Lee Horn. And it is the case they're doing repair work to that Veloster, but it may not be getting back out on circuit. Indeed, it won't be gaining any places now from that P15 if it is to return to the circuit. But we look at our battle for the win right now in the Pro class and overall, and it is Doble who continues to lead ahead of Daines as they make their way down the start finish straight here up towards another lap, and they're on to the second half of the race now. 10 minutes still to go here, and Doble does seem to be in control as they head into the right hander of turn 1, and Doble sets another personal best and another fastest lap of the race. It's another 59.1, now 59.154, and Chris Daines 2/10 slower almost on that lap by comparison. And I wonder if the Verano Motorsport driver here is just backing the car for a little bit, bringing those temperatures down, and then going on the offensive towards the end of the race. Meanwhile, Lee Horn here, he made work of John Burnham into turn number 1 last time round. Now as he makes way onto another lap here, he's putting the pressure onto Mark Arrowsmith, trying to pick off the Pro-Ams here one by one as he makes his way down towards turn number 2. But Arrowsmith here defending hard and getting his elbows out there. Mark Arrowsmith saying to Lee Horn, I'm not letting this one go. But as they make them out of the corner, I think he's overcooked it into 2 because they head up towards 3. Arrowsmith's going to have the inside on the right of your picture, Lee Horn on the left as they roll the way through, and Lee Horn's going to have to really hold it round the outside here. It's hard to go round the outside of Palmer as they roll the way on down from turn 3 up towards turn 4. And as they make their way towards the braking zone here for the turn 4 hairpin, it's going to be Aerosmith on the inside. And of course, Aerosmith wanted to get those overall championship points as well as class championship points, and he wants to keep Lee Horn between himself and John Burnham as they make their way towards turn number 5 here. But as they do, Lee Horn continues to fight this, keeping his nose on the inside there of 5, but into 6 he goes. And now it's going to all be about who wants it more on the exit of turn number 8 here as they make their way through 6 and 7 and now into 8. Aerosmith's going to have to defend into 8. He brings it back to the racing line at last possible measure, but you can see here also John Burnham getting into the fight as they make their way down towards turns 9 and 10. Down the Bentley straight they go, and as they do here in the drive, well, John Burnham's going to gain a double toe compared to the Civics in front of him as he makes his way in towards the braking zone here. Can the Audi driver get involved? We can see Aerosmith goes defensive, but Lee Horn looks at the cutback. He can't quite find it this time around, but definitely trying to set up a move. As Aerosmith there drags the car out to turn number 10, almost as if he's trying to park it on apex, but instead not parking it at the right time, and Lee Horn gets up the inside into turn 11, but you can see now how much this fight is costing the pair of them as they head into 12 there. Lee Horn tries to hold on the inside, but just not quite close enough to force the move, and instead Mark Aerosmith now gets ahead firmly as they make their way towards the end of this lap. Aerosmith definitely feeling the pinch, and meanwhile John Burnham, well, I think Burnham at this point is going to need to get a move on because he's got Rob McGregor closing up, but meanwhile Lee Horn here on the inside once again as they cross that timeline to go on to lap number 7. They've still got 7.5 minutes to go into the braking zone for turn number 1 they go. Horn on the inside, Aerosmith on the outside, and I think Lee Horn this time will get it done the way he wants to get it done. Takes a lot of apex curve there. Aerosmith's going to try and come on back, but Lee Horn switches to the inside there just before the braking zone in order to cover it off as he broken in time. I think Lee Horn has, and now finally Lee Horn up to P8 overall. That doesn't change his class position given he's battling with a Pro-Am driver, but the Pro driver gaining another overall position, and a critical one at that. But as they roll the way through turn number 3 and up towards 4 here, it is the case we can see that behind John Burnham right now is between a rock and a hard place, given the fact he'll want to find his way past Aerosmith to gain that place in the Pro-Am class, but in return he's got McGregor closing, and Burnham's going to look up the inside here versus Aerosmith. He's going to try and force Aerosmith to go deep, and Aerosmith does respond in kind. He has gone very deep and wide, coming out to 4 there, I think, intimidated by Burnham looking up the inside, and Aerosmith at this point has now got McGregor, who makes a little bit of contact there, and Aerosmith decides to back off there, recognised I think that McGregor's not in his class and there's no point fighting this one. But for Aerosmith right now, it has not gone the right way in terms of, after being passed by Lee Horn, a little bit of a mistake at turn number 4 was all that was needed to release John Burnham up into P2 in class and P9 overall, and Rob McGregor coming on through as well. Aerosmith still on the Pro-Am podium right now, but it's the case I think he went that P2 and not the P3. But meanwhile we look from them back up to Matthew Addy, who right now as he rolls his way into turn number 12 is trying to hold Gavan Gardener at bay. And these two have fallen off the pace of Andrew Holmes and Jamie Dorey over the last couple of laps. It is the case that our top 4 all lapping in the 59s right now. Our 2 leaders are Doble and Daines lapping in the low 59s, whereas the case that Dorey and Holmes lapping in the high 59s by comparison. And in fact, Chris Daines has just improved the fastest lap of the race to a 58.951. Well, they are going faster and faster with every lap turned here. But to be fair, Jamie Dorey right now, a lap that was 2 tenths slower than Andrew Holmes. But these two, Addy and Gardner, both right now really having to settle for lapping in the low to mid 2 minute point zeros, and you can imagine here they've got quite the fight, an intricate one at that between the two of them, as we do see Gavan Gardener going very deep into the hairpin on that outside. Meanwhile Addy going nice on the inside there, and as they make the way on out, it is the case that John Burnham has just been passed by Rob McGregor for what is P9, and McGregor coming on through here, the Pro driver going hunting after Lee Horn. Let's take a look at how that move was made. Here it was, and they're making their way into turn number 1. It was McGregor on the inside here. Classic move, much like what we saw from Lee Horn earlier on. And as they rolled the way through the right-hander here, well, I think John Burnham thought about potentially coming back into turn number 2 and then recognising, no, it's probably not possible, given the fact he was about 25 metres behind, and breaking from that distance into the hairpin would only be tantamount to requiring the driver in front to yield automatically. But it's the case that Rob McGregor would not yield to that. I think it would go to the steward's room, and, well, it go one that way, in particular in the favour of McGregor, as they roll the way through at turn 5 and up towards 6 once again. But as we return to these live pitches, it is the case that we do look from the midfield to a bit further up the field, and in particular we do look to what is Ben Bennyworth here, who after getting into the lead of the Pro-Am class really now has settled down and is running away with the class. It is the case that he does have a 12-second gap to John Burnham in terms of Pro-Am positions, and also overall in that P7 right now feeling secure, I think, given the fact that he does have what is there a 6.5-second gap to Lee Horn, who's in P8. But as we look from midfield, or a little little bit further up the field in the midfield to right towards the back of the field. Driver who was in a bit of a difficult start to his race, Matt Emmons here, where this gets the NXTGEN Racing green driver right now, flying on through at turns at 9 and 10, and continues to try and recover time and places. He is lapping faster than John Higgins Senior in front of him by 1.5 seconds, and indeed lapping faster than Arrowsmith and Burnham. I don't think he's going to have the time to close up on them, to be fair. I think Evans can take a bit of consolation in the fact that when we go into race number 2, whilst he'll be started towards the back of the field, he will be able to charge his way through that field quite rapidly, given the pace he's showing, so long as he keeps his head down. And indeed, that's what he's been doing since the early instant, and that's what he'll be doing in race number 2. There's no doubt about that. But as he heads towards the timeline here, we do look to John Higgins Senior, who's just crossed the timeline with what is now 3.25 minutes to go, plus the final lap from the HSR driver. It's just not seeming to hook up for the HSR machine, indeed for the Elantra driver here today, in the fact the car just does not seem to be on the pace. And even Rob McGregor, to be fair, right now in P9 just does not seem to have that pace on the table compared to Knockhill. And well, we'll have to wait to see how it plays out over the next couple of races, because it may be the case just right now they haven't found the pace, but they could unlock it in the next race here at Snetterton tonight. But we look from John Higgins Senior in P12 to Matthew Addy in P5 overall, and it is the case he continues to try and keep whereas Gavan Gardener at bay. They haven't got many more laps to turn, to be fair, and with our leaders right now making their way up towards turns at 9 and 10, our leaders are Mikey Doble and Chris Daines. I think they will most likely just about squeeze in one more lap, not 2 more laps by comparison. But meanwhile, we saw briefly there a little bit of an issue on our time in town. What on earth has happened to Mark Arrowsmith? He jumps to the pits, so it's gone very wrong with the car, and we take a look at what's happened to Mark Arrowsmith. Well, this was only moments ago. Now, Mark Arrowsmith on the inside here, weaving slightly and going straight onto the wall. Now, what on earth has happened to Mark Arrowsmith there? I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's been a major track. We try and take a look back a little bit previously. Well, this is when he went off versus what was John Burnham there, but there was no contact. So whatever's happened to Mark Arrowsmith, well, now that is a surprise and not a welcome one, to be sure. I wonder if there's been a steering wheel failure on that guy in terms of he's just straight lined on, because it is the case that we've had no indication of anything else unless the steering rack is just completely broken on the car due to perhaps a whack to a curb. That was a very unexpected moment from Mark Arrowsmith. He's in the pit lane, and that will effectively be a forced retirement, but he'll still be classified given he's done over 50% of the race. But as we return to those live pictures right now, our point being, we do believe, I think we are on that final lap. We'll only be getting 10 laps in here today as our drivers make the way on around, and Matthew Addy right now trying to hold Gavan Gardener at bay. And meanwhile, at the front of the field, it is the case. Here is Mikey Doble leading ahead of NXTGEN Racing. Well, it is the case, leading ahead of Verano Motorsports driver, or Chris Daines is the NXTGEN Racing orange driver. But as they roll the way up towards turn number 6 and 7 at this point, Daines staying with him, and as they head around, well, Daines has always been within 7 tenths, if not closer. He's just not able to find a way to close the rest of that gap down. But to be fair to Daines, whilst he's not taking the win, it's not maximum points, he's completed his key objective ahead of Dorey. He's finishing ahead of the championship leader right now, and that will give him a points gain from race to race, and that's what he needs to do in each one. If he can't beat Doble, then he's still got to finish ahead of Dorey and take every point he can as he rolls his way through turns 10 and 11 here, and they make the way up towards turn number 12 very shortly. But as they roll the way on out of 11 up towards 12, it is the case here. Doble are looking secure right now. 15 seconds left on the clock. It's going to be very close to whether we do get an 11th lap in. I don't think we will, but as they make the way through the final corner, he heads towards the line. Will the checkered flag be awaiting him? It's going to be close. It will be the checkered flag, and well, it's his return. And on his return, he took pole position. He's going to take the win in race number 1. Mikey Doble wins the NXTGEN Racing Orange in the overall and the pro category, ahead of Chris Daines for Verano Motorsport, but nothing between the two of them in the end. Minor edge to Mikey Doble, it would seem, and then Jamie Dorey will come on home P3 for NXTGEN Racing Orange on the podium, ahead of Andrew Holmes, a brilliant driver also from the privateer, but Andrew Holmes to P4, Matthew Addy P5, and then it will be Gavan Gardener P6, and then Ben Bennyworth crosses the line, your winner in the Prime class, P7 overall for Brian Stacking with Solo Racing, ahead of Lee Horn, who comes on home P8 overall and P7 in the Pro class. Rob McGregor P9, and then it's our next Prime of John Burnham, who takes second place in the Prime class, P10 overall, a brilliant drive from the Prime Stacking with Solo Racing driver there, ahead of John Higgins Senior, and then Matt Emmons will be the last on the podium for the Prime class. P12 overall, P3 in the class, ahead of Josh Brown, who's still making his way on around. But indeed a difficult race at Emmons, but still rewarded with a podium by keeping his head down and sticking to it. And then Josh Brown will be the last driver to finish this race as he makes his way out of the final corner. A difficult start to his race in this evening for the Irishman, but as he comes to the timeline, number 24 driver will finish P13 overall. That'll be P4 in the Prime class, ahead of Mark Arrowsmith, Mark Sykes and Thomas Delaney. But as he heads on through here, brilliant racing from all of our drivers. As we see Chris Daines on this cool-down lap here, he will have to try and solve the conundrum of how he can unpick the pace that Mikey Doble has. And for Jamie Dorey, he'll know now that he's going to lose a couple of key points versus what is Daines as they roll the way on around. But as we look to the scenic cameras here, it is the case. Let's take you through those race results subject to any stewards' inquiries. So after race number 1 here today in round number 7 of the NXTCC here at Snetterton, it is the case Mikey Doble taking that win in the end by 8.5 tenths ahead of Chris Daines. Nothing between the two of them in terms of lap times. Mikey Doble just having that edge, it would seem, in the end, and also holding on to lead from the start, which was critical after that superb launch that Chris Daines had off the line. Jamie Dorey completes the overall and the pro podium there in P3, finishing in P3 by 2 seconds ahead of Andrew Holmes. Andrew Holmes, to be fair, the best the rest there in P4, and we look forward to seeing how he can gain over the course of race number 2. And Matthew Addy completes the overall top 5 there and the pro top 5 in P5 for Next Gen Racing Green. Gavan Gardener, P6 behind Addy right to the finish, and we'll be looking to see if he can find that edge to get past Addy in the next race. Ben Bennyworth, P7, meaning he is our Pro-Am winner in this race, ahead of Lee Horn and Rob McGregor. And then John Burnham completes the top 10, second place in the Pro-Am class there. And then we have John Higgins Senior, P11, ahead of Matt Emmons at P12, P3 in the Pro-Am class. Congratulations to our Pro-Am podium finishers, particularly to Ben Bennyworth for another dominant display. And then Josh Brown, P13, Mark Arrowsmith, P14 classified. Mark Sykes, P15. I'm not sure if that's going to be classified given he was only able to turn 2 laps of the race. And then Thomas Delaney, unfortunately, not able to make it to the grid for race number 1, P16 there. But that is only race number 1, ladies and gentlemen. And do keep in mind, we still do have 2 more races to come. We are a little bit behind schedule, but we should be back within the next 5 minutes of race number 2. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for the build-up to race number 2 here today at Snetterton in round 7 of the NXTCC 2022 as hosted on iRacing. And after what was a superb race number 1, where we did see the return of Mikey Doble complete his full circle with the fact that he has been able to come back to winning ways straight away with the win in race number 1. It is the case he didn't have it all his own way. He had to nail it at the start and make sure he defended well into the opening couple of corners, but he did have this man of Chris Daines, the Verano Motorsport driver here from Denmark, who really did put the pressure on early. But that's one of a number of stories, and you can imagine with both of them line up again, if Daines can nail that start and Mikey Doble drops it at all at the start, Daines will be there ready to pounce in the run to turns 1 and 2. But the other key story, and perhaps the driver who had one of the weakest opening races of the evening, and not through any fault of his own after being collected early on in race number 1, and Mark Sykes here, the next-gen Racing Blue driver in the 666 car. That Hyundai Veloster driver looking very good indeed, and he's just not been given the opportunity to unleash the pace that we do believe that Sykes has behind the wheel of the Hyundai. And as he rolls his way through turn number 8 there, we're looking eagerly forward to seeing how he gets on in race number 2. Of course, he'll be starting further down the grid. He'll be starting towards the very back, given the fact that he did not finish the race under his own impetus, but still, he could achieve major results here today. It'll be a recovery drive in race number 2, and depending on how the reverse grid plays out for race number 3, he could find himself right up there going into the final race this evening. Other drivers to watch out for, of course, it is the case that we have seen across the board our Pro-Am drivers do seem to be a bit more racy compared to the pace of Ben Bennyworth in terms of closing that delta on the pace. And one man in particular, John Burnham, definitely showing a great performance in race number 1. Not quite there initially, didn't quite start off the way he wanted to, but put a lot of pressure on Mark Arrowsmith over the course of the opening half of the race, and it led to Arrowsmith making a mistake into turn number 4, and that was the difference that enabled Burnham to get into P2 in the class and bring home second place in the Pro-Am category. And can he repeat that here today in race number 2? I'm confident he can potentially do so, given the fact he does look quite stable in that Audi RS3 at the moment. But at the same time, we also need to consider Josh Brown. Didn't have the race he wanted in race number 1. It was the case there, a major off at turn at number 1 on the second lap. Saw him have flat spotted the tyres, and on top of that, never really recovered the pace in the car. And can he put that difficulty aside from race 1 and have a much smoother race number 2? I think there's plenty of opportunity to do so. And then one other driver now who, of course, not able to take part in qualifying, but in this case he started from the back and fought his way up through the field in race number 1, Robert McGregor, the HSR driver. It is the case with HSR not looking strong here today in the Hyundai Elantra. They just do not seem to be able to switch the pace on with McGregor and Higgins Senior in attendance. Can McGregor, now that he'll be starting further up the order compared to his race 1 starting position, deliver and battle with the pros? And I think he'll be salivating at the prospect of the run into turns 1 through to 2 to really start to look moving up the inside into the opening hairpin corner. But as he rolls his way through turn number 8 right now, it is the case that McGregor definitely needing to find a little bit more pace in the car. It does not seem to be there, the pace, and Higgins Senior the same. But it may have been the case that race number 1 they used to understand where the pace was and where the pace is not, and in race number 2 they'll be able to up the ante as they make the way on around in this final warm-up session. And as he makes his way on out here, it is the case that we do look from them to what is Jamie Dorey. And Dorey finishing P3 in race number 1, not able to take the fight to Chris Daines and Mikey Doble, just does not seem to have the pace compared to them over the full race distance. But then again, Dorey will not be worrying too much because it's not biting too much into his lead, but he'll be conscious of the fact that it was the case that Chris Daines finished ahead of him. And well, of course we do know that Daines is really going for that championship hunt versus Dorey as they make the way around to the end of this final practice session. Indeed, the checker flag will be out very shortly, and then we'll be making our way over to the grid for race number 2. And I would not be surprised if Dorey does try to get ahead of Daines in the run to turn number 2 on the opening lap, just to try and balance out the points accreditation from race 1 by getting an advantage on Daines in race number 2. But as he makes his way on through here into turn number 5, it is the case now that checker flag is on out. We have Lee Horn heading on around as well, and well, we transition over to the grid. So as we get the grid ready for race number 2, let's take you through it as they stand on the grid. It is the case that Mikey Doble takes pole position for NXTGEN Racing Orange, joined by Chris Daines once again on that front row for Verano Motorsport, much like in race number 1. Jamie Dorey starts P3, joined by Andrew Holmes this time on the second row. Watch out for the privateer, he's definitely looking fast. Matthew Addy and Gavan Gardener behind them on row number 3. And then we do have Ben Bennyworth, our Pro-Am pole sitter, P7, with Lee Horn alongside on row 4. Rob McGregor and John Burnham on row number 5 there, joined by John Higgins Senior and Matt Evans on row number 6. Keep your eyes out for Evans, he'll be looking for redemption from race number 1. And then on row number 7 we have Josh Brown and Mark Arrowsmith, who start P13, P14. Arrowsmith with that unfortunate ending to his race number 1. And then Mark Sykes will be starting last but not least in P15, with Thomas Delaney not able to take to the grid due to a technical issue with the car. 15 drivers will take to the grid. How will they get on over the distance? Time will only tell as we're about to go racing. One red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights, and it's lights out, and away we go here for race number 2 at Snetterton as Mikey Doe gets a good start. Chris Daines once again tries to go around the outside with a better start as they head into turn number 1, and Daines this time has got his nose ahead into the corner. Can he make it stick on cold tyres? Look at Dorey meanwhile. Dorey's trying to guard the inside of the pair of them. Well, he's going to find a way out the inside of Chris Daines. We see Andrew Holmes goes wide there. He's dropped places already as Andrew Holmes. Meanwhile, on the brake and they go. Dorey up the inside of the pair of them into the braking zone. Can he get ahead as they make the way out to turn number 2 in towards 3? Well, Mikey Doe was going to have to defend here and try and go late on the brakes into the left-hander as they roll the way on through, and Dorey right now sits on the outside, and we've seen this outside run through turn number 3 is not always the best as they head down towards turn number 4. They're still battling Mikey Doe on the inside. Dorey carries the momentum ahead as they head into the braking zone here. On the brakes they go into Agostini, and as they head for the left-hander, Dorey's got it done. Doble has to defend versus Chris Daines. Meanwhile, behind Andrew Holmes now back up to P5 ahead of Gavan Gardener after Gardener got hit briefly, but it's a drag race into turn 5 for the pair of them, and Gardener's going to try and hang around the outside to inside into turn 6, and Gavan Gardener, we're loving to see this on the Verano Motorsport driver after what's quite a slow but impactful race number 1. Now he's making an immediate impact in race number 2 here. He's up to P5 already, and Andrew Holmes losing 2 places at the start of the race, but he's got his nose in there again into turn number 8, and that's a drag race between the Audi and the Hyundai Elantra as they head down the Bentley straight. Just ahead of them, however, Chris Daines holds at bay Matthew Addy, but it's not the start that Chris Daines wanted. He's lost the place at the start, and as they make their way down towards turns 9 and 10 right now, you can see that Gardener going defensive, keeping Holmes at bay, and Lee Horn right tucked in behind as they make their way into the braking zone here. The concertina effect applies as they all come through. Oh, goodness me, Josh Brown is turned there on the run through turns 9 and 10. Was there contact for Brown? We're not sure. We'll take a look back very shortly at that, but he's not had the race start he wanted. But as he makes his way on out here, it is the case that the field is very tightly packed together, and we can see that Ben Benioff right now under pressure from Rob McGregor. He tries to hold the place after losing P7 to Lee Horn at the race start, but to be fair to Ben Benioff, he only needs to worry about battling with his classes. Lee Horn goes a bit wide. So after one lap, it is Jamie Dorey who leads, followed by Mikey Doble in P2, Chris Daines P3, followed by Matthew Addy P4, Garner P5, Holmes P6, Lee Horn P7, ahead of Ben Benioff and Rob McGregor in P8 as they make the way into turn number 1. Once again, you can see here Lee Horn having to defend versus Ben Benioff. Ben going on the inside there. Will he go a bit deep through 1? No, he doesn't. He stays there. Ben Benioff P8, Rob McGregor P9 as they make their way down towards turn number 2. Onto the brakes they go here, and you see Rob McGregor trying to go round the outside as they roll the way through the hairpin. But the problem is, of course, he's got to try and get the traction, but Rob McGregor finds the traction on Benioff as they head into turn number 3. And I think this is all said and done for Rob McGregor. A nice move from the Scottishman as he makes his way down towards turn 4. But as he does, Lee Horn goes wide, and as he rejoins, Lee Horn losing another place, in fact losing 2 places at the price of 1 mistake. And now he's got to worry about the fact that John Burnham, he makes it a 3-way loss, 4-way loss potentially as John Higgins Senior comes on through as well, and Higgins Senior trying to pounce. Meanwhile, Chris Daines has found his way past Mikey Doe in the battle for P2. We'll take a look back at that very shortly, but you can see here John Burnham with Lee Horn is outside to inside into turn number 6 here. Lee Horn is not letting Burnham have this at all. He does not want to lose any more places after what was a difficult run through turn at number 3. And as they make the way all the way up towards turn at number 9, now as they go on to the back straight here, it is the case we've got Andrew Holmes battling with Gavan Gardener, and well, Gardener was keeping Holmes at bay for a brief while, but it does look as Andrew Holmes has found a way through as he goes around the outside in the run to 9. As they make the 3, you can see that the car unsettled under brake, and Andrew Holmes with a very heavy rear brake bias, and as he makes his way out to turn number 10, in this case he's got to be careful because the car keeps snapping on him, then it's going to make it ever more unstable platform as he goes deeper and deeper into the race as he wears down those rear tyres and also those front tyres as well. But as they make the way through turn 12 and up towards 13, it is the case that we can see up front is battling, and further behind John Burnham here in a scramble with John Higgins Senior as they head through Corrie. Oh, goodness me! And in the end, Arrowsmith connecting with Burnham through turn number 12. Both drivers off there. Arrowsmith for returns, cutting the corner, but to be fair, he'll lift off and lose the time he's gained. Meanwhile, up front, it's a battle for the lead into turn number 1, and it's Jamie Dorey ahead of Chris Daines, but Daines goes around the outside. Dorey on the apex curve. Now Daines, has he got it done here as he takes it? Oh my good lord, there's contact between the two of them, and it's the case that whilst Daines got ahead, a bit of grass unsettled the car, and Daines and Dorey in contact, and that releases Mikey Doble back into the lead. Matthew Addy's up to P2, and Addy right now is on a charge here. It's all kicking off in race number 2, and it's an unfortunate series of errors from drivers that are leading to everything exploding onto our screens. But as they make their way around now, Mikey Doble has a huge opportunity here to break away. If he can get away from Matthew Addy, Andrew Holmes now up to P3, and this becomes ever more significant for Gavan Gardener behind, who now will know he's battling for a podium finish here if he can get ahead of Andrew Holmes. But as they make their way into turn number 5, we look a bit further back, and Chris Daines right now with a wounded Audi. It is the case, much like Jamie Dorey, both of them trying to get the way around the circuit. The safety car, as we understand it, is currently still in the pit lane. It has not gone out into circuit, to be fair, because the circuit has been cleared. It's not as though there's a major obstruction, but Daines definitely with the wounds to the car and letting Josh Brown through there into turn number 6. In this case, Brown picking up the pieces and points as he goes. Well, we're a little bit of a calm now after what was a raging storm of moments. We have ample opportunity here to take a look back at exactly what happened, starting with Josh Brown going off track on lap number 1. Well, this was on the opening lap into turns 9 and 10. Was there contact? I don't think so. Just losing the round of breaking into 9, and the car snapping round on him. A whack to the wall there, but still not too heavy a whack, and he'll carry on. We return back to live pictures very briefly, and we'll shortly be taking a look at what exactly happened between John Burnham and Mark Arrowsmith there in that contact between the two, as we do see Lee Horner trying to creep closer to John Higgins Senior. But we've got the replay of Arrowsmith versus Burnham coming up now. This is only moments ago, and as we ride on board here, Mark Arrowsmith, they were coming for turn number 12, and just a bit of contact there with Burnham. Clipped him on what was his left rear quarter panel, and that led to Burnham being turned across the circuit in the front of Mark Arrowsmith, and Arrowsmith straight lined on there. Unfortunate contact. I don't think there was any malice intended between that, and I think Arrowsmith and Burnham just racing intensely and closely together, and that's what set everything off. But as we return to live pictures now, we hear Chris Daines is in the pit lane with repair work. Jamie Dorey has also been into the pits to have repair work done. So in fact, Dorey I think spun out on circuit somewhere, so it is the case it has not worked out for Dorey. In fact, he's rejoined now, but Lee Hornet trying to put that pressure back onto John Higgins Senior and Ben Bennyworth, meanwhile under pressure from Rob McGregor here as they make the way on down towards turn number 4. But turn number 4 they charge down into. It is the case that Bennyworth right now trying to just keep the pro driver behind him at bay. And of course the last replay we do need to take a look at was the contact between Chris Daines and Jamie Dorey, and here it is. So coming through the corner there, and well, Daines just went a little bit wide, and as he did try to bring the car back to circuit, the car was unsettled and connected with Dorey. And to be fair, I think both of them racing very hard, and it just did not work out. And as we take another look back here from the exterior camera looking over, this will give you the perspective. Well, Chris Daines, as he rejoined the car, just slightly unsettled, connected with Jamie Dorey, and that was all they wrote with regards to that one. And in the end, well, I think it may just be treated as an incident that leans a bit more on Daines losing control, but at the same time no malice intended. And well, as we return to live pictures right now, both drivers there, two major contenders for the win of this race, both falling by the wayside after some very hot and furious racing. But it also does mean for Jamie Dorey, he won't have to worry about Daines picking up major points, given the fact that both of them are going to be finishing outside of the top 10 here in the overall classification. But now that we return to live pictures, having cleared the replays of the major instance on the opening couple of laps, we've still got 12 minutes of racing to go. No safety car out, of course, as we said earlier, given the fact the track was cleared after those incidents. It was not as though we had a major obstruction. And as the racing presses on here, I can tell you it is the case that Mikey Doyle has broken away from Matthew Addy, but one driver who's not breaking away from his aggressor is Andrew Holmes, who right now has Gavan Gardener behind him. And you can see here from the gearbox of Andrew Holmes that Audi RS3 is getting closer and closer. It almost takes off the camera there from the rear bumper of Andrew Holmes' car as they make their way out to turn number 2 and up towards 3. Now the thing we do know is that Gavan Gardener is able to stay with Andrew Holmes throughout the lap. We have seen that over the course of race number 1. We've seen it again in race number 2, but he just does not seem to be able to find a way to unlock the pace he needs to make a move. Now whether that is engine temperature that's costing the Audi a bit of speed, well, I was going to stop my thoughts there, because it's the case that Andrew Holmes goes a bit deep into 4, and this is the excuse that Gavan Gardener needs to get it on the inside, but he just does not have the pace into turn number 5. But coming back fact, I thought if Gavan Gardener's having to manage engine temperature on that Audi, he may be having to lift and coast quite heavily into those braking zones so as not to overheat the engine, and that's costing. But Holmes is struggling here as they come out in 6 and 7 up into 8, and Gardner's going to waste no time in putting the car on the inside into turn number 8, and as they emerge from Williams' corner, it's side by side now. But here's the thing, the Elantra is the stronger of the two. Initially in the run up towards top speed, it's only in the very highest of gears where that Audi starts to come back strong enough. But as they head underneath the bridge there, it's the case that Holmes gets back ahead briefly, and Gardner continues to run as closely possibly can behind Andrew Holmes. But the thing is, he can run as close as he needs to and put that pressure on, but if he can't exploit when it goes wrong for Andrew Holmes, then it is worth nothing, and that's the problem that Gardner's got right now. He's doing everything in the world to put the pressure on, but he just does not seem to have a way to get the deal done as they roll the way through turn number 12, and Marie ride on board here with the Rana Motorsport driver. As he makes way on, you can see Holmes there just getting a bit wrong. The car stepping out of the rear end there, and the transition from 12 under braking into 13. And that's the sign. I think if Gardner can keep the pressure on, he will make Andrew Holmes make a major error soon. I think one is coming if Gardner can keep that pressure on. That's not to besmirch Holmes' ability. It's just the fact that he seems to be right on the edge right now with regards to that Elantra compared to the Audi driver of Gardner, who's looking very smooth and compact by comparison. But as they emerge their way out to turn 1 and down towards 2, taking that much apex curve, that's not going to help either of them in their cause as they make their way through the hairpin of 2, through Wilson hairpin, and as they exit on out here, heading up towards Palmer at turn 3. It is the case that Gardner right now continues to stay right in the hunt, and also Matthew Addy just up the road is lapping in the 2-minute flat 0.6s, and it is the case that Holmes and Gardner on clear laps are matching that pace. Dover was broken away at the head of the field, but I would not be surprised if over the remaining 9 minutes we could see this battle for P3 turn into a freeway fight for P2 should Addy's pace not up a slight margin, because it is the case that right now, if these two aren't fighting of Gardner and Holmes, they are on the pace to bring Addy into their midst. But as they make their way in towards turn at 6 and 7 here, it is the case that it looks as though this time around Holmes having a much smoother lap by comparison and not making those mistakes we saw previously, and Gardner's not able to pounce. But to be fair to Gardner, perhaps he'll be hoping that he doesn't have to try and capitalise on errors and he can just pounce in the toe. Meanwhile, a bit further back here, we can see now it's a little bit of a HSR conundrum here, because we have Higgins Senior from HSR closing up on his teammate Rob McGregor, both of them pro drivers of course, and it does seem based on the timing sheets that last lap Higgins Senior was 5 tenths or half a second faster. I wonder if a position swap is coming here as they make their way up towards turns 9 and 10. Ben Bennyworth at the head of this group, of course, running in P5 overall and the leader of the Prime class, and a bit further back we've got Lee Horn there, and then our next Prime driver is Matt Emmons, who right now is a margin of what is 3 seconds behind Bennyworth as he makes his way through turn at number 11 or bomb hole corner. And as they roll the way through corner of turn 12, it is the case that Emmons right now doing everything he can to close on up here. And I think he needs to push now, Emmons, because he must notice that HSR are stacking up behind Bennyworth, and it is the case that Lee Horn is also getting a bit closer as he makes a mistake there, does Lee Horn on the exit of the final corner. And if Emmons can be there when Bennyworth is pulled down the order, should McGregor and Higgins Senior make their moves to that position, then it will be Emmons' time to strike and potentially buck the trend that we have seen where Bennyworth is picking up all the victory silverware time and time again. But as they make their way on around, we can see Mark Arrowsmith meanwhile in P13 chasing after John Burnham here. They're battling for P5 in the Prime class, P12 on circuit, and as they make their way down towards turn at number 1, it is the case here we can see Burnham going defensive in the run through Rich's corner, but he goes a bit too deep into 1, and as a result Arrowsmith's going to come on through here, and Brown just simply understeering a bit deep into the corner, carrying a bit too much speed, and Arrowsmith taking up the place for P12. A nice move there from Mark Arrowsmith as he now makes his way onwards and chases after Brown, who is 5 seconds up the road. But looking from one nice move to a potential move that's upcoming, it is the case that Matthew Addy on that last lap lost a whole second to both Holmes and Gardener, and what we predicted is true. Matthew Addy is under pressure, and if you want the proof, here it is in terms of the pudding, in the fact that we ride on board with Matthew Addy to a gearbox here and look back, and that is Holmes, who is 6 tenths of a second behind, and in the toe here down what will be the Bentley straight, he'll get that down to at least half a second if not less as they make their way out towards turns 9 and 10. Now for Addy, of course, he has one advantage here in the fact that if he recognises that Gardener is very close to the back of Holmes, he can potentially back Holmes into Gardener and get the two of them to fight. But you can see that Gardener is really itching to try and make that move for P3 right now, and he just does not have the final 10% he needs, and perhaps Addy can force that situation to occur where Gardener's able to get alongside once again. If he does so, that would work to his advantage, because then he can break away. But Holmes, meanwhile, able to withstand the pressure of Gardener as they come through turn number 13, and Gavan Gardener by comparison here, again staying right there with them as they make their way through. Now meanwhile, we've got a bit of an off track here, and that's Josh Brown, who's just had a moment. He was running in what was, I do believe, P4 in the Pro-Am class at the time, and I think it's turns 9 and 10 which will come back to haunt him. We take a look back. Well, making his way down to 9 is because the rear snaps loose, and under trail braking the rear, just snapping a bit too far loose, and Josh Brown another tap to the wall for the JBW Racing driver, but to be fair, not a big whack, and he's been able to get himself back up to speed, but losing 2 places to Aerosmith and Burnham as he then returns to the circuit. In fact, going very slowly there, Josh Brown. I think it is the case. There's a problem with the car. Also, he's just trying to bring it back together as he lets Chris Daines through there. But as he brings himself back up to speed, I think Brown perhaps just simply trying to make sure all the car's okay before he brought it back up to speed. And also trying to figure out if there's any steering rack or suspension damage, because that will make the car ever more unstable, more difficult to drive. But he's now back up to pace as Chris Daines has found his way up into P13. But at this point, I think Chris Daines recognises that it's a case of just bringing the car to the end. And if he can try and get into the P12 to give himself an outside chance of being in that reverse grid draw, of course. The further up the order you finish, the more likely you're in that draw, but P12 is included, then that'll work out for him. Otherwise, he's got it all to do from effectively what is the back of the grid in race number 3 tonight. If he can't be in P12 or higher, and the reverse grid does not work out for him. But meanwhile, we look from one pro driver who's having to try and make a recovery to one pro driver who is enjoying racing after making a bit of a recovery to the start of his pace, and that is John Higgins Senior right now, who's battling with Lee Horn for P7, which is P6 in the pro class. Here is Lee Horn looking quite close into turns 9 and 10, but not able to get the move done, trying to get Higgins Senior to make a mistake in the run through 9, but it's not to be. And as they roll the way through at turn number 11 right now, you see that Higgins Senior falling away from Rob McGregor, who right now is more focused on chasing after Bennyworth here, but Bennyworth still maintaining that pace and keeping the pros behind him, but at bay as they roll the way through the left hand. He briefly lose John Higgins Senior, and he reappears there, but it is the case looking from them to race leader Mikey Doble. Well, here he is 9 seconds clear of the field, and he's just set the fastest lap of the race, a 58.53, the fastest lap we've seen all evening in race conditions so far. And it is the case that Next Gen Racing orange driver here just in a world of his own. But as he makes his way on front team, one driver who's not in a world of his own, and he's in a world of defending right now, and that is Matthew Addy, our P2 runner, who, as he rolls his way into turn number 3, there's a huge opportunity here in this race for him to get some major points. He's just got to keep Holmes and Gardner at bay, but I think the biggest challenge is making sure that Gardner and Holmes fight one another and don't try to fight him as they make their way down into turn number 4. And as we ride on board here with Andrew Holmes, it is the case of which you can see in the left-hand mirror there briefly, that he's got Gardner all over the back of him coming out to turn number 4, Agostini, and as they make their way into Hamilton corner, turn number 5, it is a case here Holmes able to take the natural racing line. Gardner not close enough to look for the move, but when you're in the situation like Holmes here, where you want to go after the driver in front of you, but you've also got the driver behind really bearing down in the air, can put a lot of pressure on. It's not a nice place to be, because you essentially have to hedge your bets one way or the other. You either have to focus on defending and let the guy in front go, or you have to really push hard to try and make the move for the guy in front, hoping that that push for the move in front does not let the driver behind get into a position to make a move for you. And I think Holmes at this point is having to focus more and more looking backwards rather than forwards here, because he was closing rapidly versus Addy, who drifts a little bit there through turn 9 into 10. But it is the case now that Gardner's putting more and more pressure on. Holmes is not able to keep Addy so close as to try and bring the pass to bear as they make the way around each and every lap. You can see the gap is 3.5 tenths between Holmes and Addy as they make the way into turn 12 of Coram. But as they roll the way through this corner, if Holmes can't get a much better run compared to Addy out to turn number 13, I think it's going to be a rinse and repeat situation. As you can see there, the car sliding under braking for Holmes and Addy into turn 13. It is the case that the tyre wear started to accumulate, but sliding more for Holmes. But to bring the car a bit tighter to corner apex, that's cost him the run out of 13 up towards turn 1. He'll close, but nowhere near close enough. And Gardner is just a little bit further back as they make the way on around and onto what for them, as we understand it, is the penultimate lap, although it's a 50-50 on that. In fact, no, I think this is the final lap we can confirm, given the fact we're on to lap number 10, and I do not think we've got enough time to squeeze and a length lap in, despite the fact Mikey Doble has been setting an absolutely brilliant pace so far. But as they make the way on around at this point, Andrew Holmes really now starting to sliver all over the back of Addy. I think Gardner's given him a bit of breathing room here. Perhaps Gardner's turned the wheel down, hoping that Holmes and Addy will come together. together when the move occurs, should it occur, as they make the way up towards turn number 4 here. Holmes to go look to the inside on Addy. Addy squeezed, and there's contact between the two, and Addy drifts his way through 4, and in the end I think Holmes would argue was squeezed too much. Meanwhile I think Addy would argue that it was the case that he was able to defend, and Holmes now has to defend into turn number 5 as they roll the way through, as Gardener now tries to pounce on the instant as they make the way through. Oggy's at turn 6 and 7 here. Gardener's still not able to find a way through. It is the case he has to wait his turn, and meanwhile off camera Higgins Senior has gone past Rob McGregor. The two HSR drivers have swapped places at P6 overall, P5 in the Pro class, but as we continue to focus here on the battle for P2 overall and in the Pro class, it is the case that Gavan Gardener still very close but not able to find the way through here. Holmes is keeping them at bay just enough as they make the way up towards turn number 10, and as they roll the way through the right-hander here, well, it's going to be a short run round now, as meanwhile we look to our race leader here, who after a difficult start, it saw him drop down to P3, but with Dorey and Daines coming together, he took the lead back and no questions asked, has run away with it. It's going to be 2 out of 2 for Mikey Doe as he takes the checker flag here in race number 2 at Snetterton for Next Gen Racing Orange by a margin of over 12 seconds from Matthew Addy, who despite the intentions of Holmes and Gardener has held on to take P2. He will finish second place, a brilliant drive for Matthew Addy, P3 for Andrew Holmes to complete the pro and overall podium, and Gavan Gardener P4. And then here comes Ben Bennyworth to take another win here at Snetterton in the pro class, P5 overall, a top 5 finish. He'll be pleased as punch for that, ahead of John Higgins Senior, Rob McGregor and Lee Horn. And then it is Matt Evans who crosses the line, second place in pro class, P9 overall, ahead of Mark Sykes. So after a difficult race, number 1 flashing his lights there in joy, we briefly saw the Next Gen Racing blue driver makes it a pro and podium P3, ahead of Mark Arrowsmith, who comes home P11. That's P4 in the pro class, and there'll be John Burnham at P5 in the pro class, completing the pro and top 5, P12 overall, ahead of Chris Daines. And then it will be Josh Brown, the last driver to finish on the lead lap. Jamie Dorey finishing a lap down in P15. He has finished his race. We briefly saw him as we're coming down through the lead lap order, but Josh Brown will be our last lead lap finisher, not having a happy day in race number 2. Turn 9 really catching out the car as he crosses the line there, P14. But for Matthew Addy, what a race and a drive from the Next Gen Racing green driver. I believe that's probably one of his best, if not his best drive of the season in that race, holding at bay Andrew Holmes and Gavan Gardener, two drivers who were not making it anywhere near easy for him to defend. And well, Addy has shown that when push comes to shove, he's able to push back and hold on to those critical positions, and that P2 will give him a plethora of points to take him forward from this round. But as we now get ready for race number 3, let's take you through those race results for race number 2, subject to stewards' inquiries. So after another 20 minutes of racing in round 7 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship for 2022, it is the case Mikey Doble taking the win by 12.5 seconds over Matthew Addy, and Andrew Holmes taking P3 to complete the top 3, indeed the podium overall and in the pro class. Gavan Gardener finishing P4, not quite able to make the move on Andrew Holmes once again, but still a dogged and resilient P4, and then Ben Bennyworth taking the final spot in the overall top 5, your winner in the Pro-Am class there, ahead of John Higgins Senior, Rob McGregor and Lee Horn. And then in P9, Matt Emmons there taking P2 in the Pro-Am class, ahead of Mark Sykes, who completes the top 10. But more importantly for him, and I think the thing they'll be ecstatic about down in the Next Gen Blue Garage, taking P3 in the Pro-Am class and on the podium. Mark Arrowsmith P11 ahead of John Burnham. Great battle between the two of them. And Chris Daines P13 after difficulties early on the race after that collision with Jamie Dorey. But it's the case Josh Brown P14, and then Jamie Dorey finishing a lap down, last but not least, in P15. Well, those are results of race number 2, ladies and gentlemen. And now we start to build up to what is race number 3 coming up very shortly. It'll be another 20 minutes of racing action, but there is of course the question of that reverse grid draw, and well, let's cut over to the commentary booth. And as you join me in the commentary booth, it is the case, as always, we have our lottery bowl here. We do have an equal number of sticky notes cut up for P6 through to P12. I'll now close my eyes and shuffle the bowl, and then we'll do the draw as to who is going to take reverse grid pole. So with them all shuffled, I will now draw a number at random from the bowl, or a sticky note at random, if I can actually find one with my fingers. And it is the case. We do have a note. And reverse grid pole will be... Well, it's the first time this season. It is P10, 10th place, takes pole position for the purposes of race number 3. That will be your prime driver in the 666 car of Mark Sykes, who will be on pole. It's going to be a big challenge for him. Can he hold on, potentially take a top 5 finish, or more importantly, take a Pro-Am win here today at Snetterton? We will find out very shortly. All that and more coming up, ladies and gentlemen, in about 5 minutes' time. We'll be back soon for the build-up to race number 3. Don't go anywhere. You won't want to miss it. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are back then for race number 3 in round 7 of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship here today at Snetterton, as hosted on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And with another 20 minutes of racing to go, our final race of this evening at the East England circuit, it is the case that race number 2 was a bit different compared to race number 1. In the fact that we saw straight from the outset a major battle between 3 major belligerents right at the front of the field, including Chris Daines, Jamie Dorey, and what was Mikey Doble. But where the difference seemed to come when Chris Daines thought he had it all done and wrapped up in the run through turn number 1, a slight dip of the left-hand side wheels beyond the curb and onto the grass saw him have to rejoin, and as the car was a little bit unsettled, a bit of contact between himself and Jamie Dorey set off a chain reaction which brought the two together and put them both effectively out of the hunt for the win. In return, Mikey Doble was able to saunter off into the distance, and so for Daines and Dorey, it is the case they are starting right down the field for the purposes of race number 3, and therefore now they've got it all to do. But of course, what that means is they're in a stalemate with regards to points. Daines has gained some points in race number 1, but he hasn't really gained in race number 2, and now in race number 3, we'll have to wait and see how the pair of them come through. Will they temporarily work together, form a temporal alliance, and try to work their way past the order and then go battling for the positions right at the end, or will it be elbows out immediately between the two of them? That's what we'll have to wait and find out. Meanwhile, our hero arguably of race number 2, Matthew Addy, the Next Gen Racing green driver, holding on to P2 at the finish in class and also overall. It was the case a determined defence enabled him to hold off Andrew Holmes and Gavan Gardener, and you can imagine that he'll be looking to do it once more here, or make his way up through the order and keep it clean and keep it straightforward. Race number 1, it didn't quite work out the way he wanted it to, but race number 2, he found that right balance of aggression and keeping it clean at the start, and that's what got him right up there and in the hunt for that strong podium finish. And well, the last big question of course is with regards to Mark Sykes. We announced it was a top 10 reverse grid based on the live draw, and Mark Sykes will be the pole sitter, the prime driver who had a lot of pace in initial practice. Qualifying didn't quite work out. Race number 1 didn't work out, but not for his own doing, involved in an incident that was not his fault. But it is the case that in race number 3, he starts on pole after showing that great pace in race number 2. And could he potentially be a new winner in the prime class, or will it be the dominant drives of Ben Bennyworth that continue the story once again, as it does look as though those liveries there not loaded correctly, and we hope to get that fixed very shortly. But Ben Bennyworth is looking to be the runner form driver here with what is essentially now a chain, if my memory serves me correctly, of 11 wins on the bounce in the prime class. And if you could put a 12th one in today, I think he is moving into legendary territory in the series, it must be said. But as we do wait to go racing here, it is the case that John Burnham right now, a strong driver, unfortunately a difficult coming together between himself and Mark Arrowsmith at turn number 12 in race number 2, saw both of their races for the podium come to an end, but they still battled one another. In the end, Arrowsmith being able to find the upper hand versus Burnham, he'll be aware of that. But as he makes his way through turn at number 4, we should show awareness in the Twitch chat there to Sobygred. Hope you're doing well, Soby, and saying hype, hype indeed. We've got plenty of hype for race number 3 here, and we are only a minute away from going to the gridding process, and it'll be interesting to see how that reverse grid works on out, because for Mikey Doble, of course, it will be the case. If he wants to make it 3 out of 3, he's going to have to come from P10 of the field. He won't have all of the faster drivers alongside him, such as Daines and Dorey will be behind him, but even so, coming from P10 up through the order, he'll want to do it quickly, he'll want to do it cleanly, and try to avoid being caught up in any battles. And will he get what he desires, or will he find himself having to bump and rub up against the likes of Andrew Holmes, who, to be fair, will be showing dogged defence, there's no doubt about that, and looking to try and keep a Doble at bay? That will be the big challenge for him. But as Andrew Holmes here runs a bit wide the privateer, it is the case here. We know that Andrew Holmes has got a lot of pace under the helm, but we also know that Elantra does fall away in the final 10 minutes of the race. Can he put those pace concerns to bed, or will it be the case we see a repeat of race number 2? Well, all that and more is about to come to you now, as we are moments away from setting the grid. And as we transition over to set of the grid, here is your grid for the purposes of race number 3 this evening. Mark Sykes starts on pole position ahead of Matt Emmons, who lines up alongside in there in P2. The two Brown drivers share the front row of the grid. Behind them, the two pro drivers of Lee Horn and Rob McGregor, followed by John Higgins Senior and Ben Bennyworth. They make up your third row. We then have what is Gavan Gardener and Andrew Holmes on row number 4, with Matthew Addy and Mikey Doble completed the top 10 there, and the reverse grid top 10. Our race winner of races 1 and 2. We're looking to make it 3 in a row. Mark Harrismith and John Burnham start on the 6th row. The two proams there, P11 and P12. We can expect plenty of battle in between them in this race. And then we do have Chris Daines and Josh Brown on row at number 7. And then Jamie Dorey starting last but not least in P15 on row number 8. That's how the grid stands. It's now time for us to go racing. And after 20 minutes, will it be this man, Mark Sykes, is at the front still? Or will it be the case that the field is able to pick the way past him? Well, we will have what is 20 minutes to find out. And now here come the lights. Red light, 2 red lights, 3 red lights, 4 red lights, 5 red lights. And it's lights out, and away we go here for race number 3 at Snetterton, and immediately Mark Sykes gets a good start, but Matthew Addy meanwhile gets a brilliant launch off the line, and he's gaining place. He's gained 2 already in the run down towards turn number 1, and as our drive scramble into Richards corner here, look at Rob McGregor squeezing up the inside and Matt Emmons into turn 1, and as they roll the way on out, Gavan Gardener gains some place as well. We've got a driver off circuit, that's Ben Bennyworth, who's taking a bit of a rally cross line. Meanwhile, Lee Horn up the inside of Mark Sykes, he goes in heavy here, but as he does, can Mark Sykes get the car around the outside? Oh, they've come together, and Rob McGregor there making it 3 wide for a brief moment. It's the case that McGregor is now up into the lead, and a fairy tale start has gone so horribly wrong for Mark Sykes as they roll the way through turn number 3. John Higgins Senior, P2 and HSR are on the charge now, as meanwhile Matt Emmons runs a bit wide there, but Emmons can't afford to make too many run wides with his right now. He's leading the pram class, but as they make the way down towards turn number 4, here you can see that Gavan Gardener's covered through, Mark Harrismith into P5, and then Jamie Dorey, he's jumped all the way up 9 places, as meanwhile it is the case that Addy P7, then we've got John Burnham P8. We're hearing that Chris Daines has jumped to the pits. I'm not sure what's happened there. We'll have to dissect that very shortly through replays, but it is the case that John Burnham right now has got Matthew Addy trying to go around the outside of him, and Matthew Addy, after what was a brilliant launch off the line, he's been stumbling a little bit here, but he's been able to hold on to that P7 for the time being, as meanwhile behind him, Andrew Holmes here looking up the inside of where's Josh Brown into turns 6 and 7. He gets it done, and Bennyworth with contact there versus Brown. I think Bennyworth trying to squeeze on through. Brown figured he had the ability to shut the door, and now Mikey Doe will try to go round the pair of them, and surely it's the case that Mikey Doe can get off the grass. It is. He's had to yoink the car off the grass, but as they make their way 3 wide down into turn 9, nobody wants to back out, and as they head into the corner, Mikey Doe's going to go up the inside of the pair of them as Brown goes to the grass. Doe rolls his one through. Oh, goodness me, and Brown comes across the circuit and connects with Mikey Doble as they make their way back to the line, but as they return to the circuit here, well, Doble being brave, it's not quite worked out in the end through no fault of his own, but after 1 lap then we can see here as they emerge from the final corner and head towards the timeline, it is Rob McGregor who leads after a dramatic opening lap with John Higgins Senior, his teammate behind him, P2. Gavan Gardener P3, but Gardener already looking for the move on Higgins Senior as they come on across and down towards turn 1. Then Matt Emmons in P4 here, the prime driver ahead of what is there Jamie Dorey, as we have the safety car out. Unfortunately, we do have a safety car here as they make the way around onto the next lap, and I do believe that is for what's happened to Chris Daines on the opening lap. But Jamie Dorey P5, Mark Harrismith P6, following Matthew Addy P7, John Burnham P8, and then Andrew Holmes P9, Ben Bennyworth in P10, Mikey Doble P11, losing a place at the start. As you see, Andrew Holmes are flashing his lights furiously, I believe, with John Burnham, and then Lee Horn P12, followed by Mark Sykes P13, Josh Brown P14 as it currently stands, and then Chris Daines in the, well, it is the case that Chris Daines, I do believe, is in the pit lane still being repaired here, so it is the case trying to get work done on the car. But we take a look back at what exactly happened to set off all this, particularly with what happened to Chris Daines. Well, as we try to find the replay footage, here we go. This was Chris Daines on the open lap. We were squeezed there between Brown and what was, I believe, that's Holmes, and then turned across Brown by looks of things. Now we take another look back from the blimp camera here, if we can get a close in view. Whereas, okay, so you can see Daines briefly. It's not the most ideal of views, but just squeezed and in the end turned by Brown, it would seem. And that was at the aftermath of everything that had happened. But there was more than that. Of course, we had Lee Horn come in very hot. We take a look at what happened to Lee Horn. Wonder braking it, coming in a bit too hot as he emerged from the corner. That contact with Sykes there, trying to power out, and then Daines, well, as he emerged from the corner, much like what happened to Lee Horn. It's the case, both drivers have been turned across an opponent, and well, that's going to be a difficult one for the stewards to decipher, but indeed not the way they wanted it to go. And then we, of course, did have that brief moment with Josh Brown getting it wrong, and here was the instant in the run to turns 9 and 10. A brilliant free-wide moment here, but as Doble got the double pass move done, I think he was thinking, okay, it's all said and done, and then Brown, as he brought the car across the line, I think Doble tried to react to it, but it was too late then, and Doble connecting with Brown. Well, in fact, Brown really connecting with Doble, we should say, and as they made their way back up to speed and not working out, but still we had a bit of side-by-side there between what was Lee Horn and Brown. Brown being given the elbow there, and that was all the racing done. And now we are still behind the safety car here, as we can confirm that Chris Daines is back out of the pit lane and making his way up towards the back of the field. And I suspect our safety car here, being driven by Gaz Williams, will make its way on around for another lap at least before we do go racing once again. And given the fact the prerogative is for the safety car to give our drivers enough time to repair in the pits if they have been involved in a major incident, and then close their way as much as possible up to the field. So I suspect that there will be one more lap behind the safety car, but perhaps at the end of the next lap we will go race. Of course, that does put a lot of pressure on Chris Daines to try and make his way around. He is currently up at turn number 9 as they've gone on to the next lap, and it also does mean, given the duration of the lap here, the normal lap time being just under 2 minutes for our fastest drivers, on average 2 minutes, let's assume it is just 2 minutes flat on average, that does mean we are going to be losing a lot of race time. We've lost 50 seconds here from what is effectively mid-mine ace behind the safety car, given that lap was a 2:50 for our drivers, so you can imagine we are biting quite heavily into the available racing time here, and that means all opportunities for our drivers to cut their way up through the field are becoming more and more limited. Indeed, the amount of battling we have, but indeed that only places the emphasis on getting a good restart here, and of course it will be a rolling restart where it will be Rob McGregor who decides when we go racing once again after he's released the safety car and the safety car has made its way to the pit. So once it's on that pit entry line, but as they make the way through here, we do see Jamie Dorey flash his lights a little bit there. I think trying to say to the drivers in front, can we not go a little bit faster? I need that temperature. And we've got some very ominous cloud over the circuit. Now, of course, rain not modelled in iRacing, so we can't have rain at the moment, but that could be a sign of things to come in a later iRacing build, perhaps towards the end of this year, if not early 2023. But the fact of the matter is, it is the case, the circuit is cooler now, in the fact we have not had direct sunlight on the track surface between races between race 2 and 3. So track temperatures drop, ambient temperatures drop to a degree as well, and that means that our drivers can go racing a bit more without worrying about the tyres falling off, particularly our Lancia drives. And I wouldn't be surprised if HSR are already cognizant of that and are really pushing the boat out here with regards to trying to make it a 1-2 after a difficult pair of races to start with. They'll want to end on a high, but as they make their way down towards turn number 9 right now, everybody's staking here, trying to get temperature into those tyres. And well, it is the case that Chris Daines is going to rejoin this pack just about. He's pushing around here, is Chris Daines, to be fair, and he will catch them in the run through turns 11 and 12 here. So Daines has done a mammoth job in closing up, and Josh Brown not too much further back, although he's up at what is turn number 4 right now. It's coming for Agostini Bend, but for Daines, he will just about closing up, and that will work out nicely. As you can see, that the safety car has already peeled off, so it will be in this lap, and Rob McGregor that is setting the pace as they make the way through turn number 12. And when will he decide to go? He does have to wait until the safety car gets to what is the pit entry line, but McGregor will go soon, and indeed the safety car is there at the pit lane now, and very shortly McGregor will go. As he makes his way out the final corner, Rob McGregor puts his foot down, and we go racing once again with 12.5 minutes on the clock. And as they make their way up towards turn number 1 this time, McGregor and Higgins Senior get a good start. Gardener, however, trying to put the pressure on, and meanwhile they make the way on up, and then we can see Matt Evans here under pressure from Jamie Dorey. Dorey trying to go around the outside of the Next Gen Race's sister team into turn 1. He gets it hooked up nicely there. Meanwhile, Gavan Gardener here on the move versus what is Higgins Senior into turn number 2. Onto the brakes they go, and Gardener hasn't had to wait long to try and go for this move. He's found a way past one Alantra, or has he, as they make the way up towards turn number 3. Side by side into the braking zone they roll, and as they do, well, Higgins Senior is not going to give up on this one. He's not going to shy away from a bit of elbow action as they roll the way through a 3, but in the end, Gardner is made to fall back behind for now, but coming up towards turn number 4, can he look up the inside here? Well, Higgins Senior peels it into the middle of the road, no way through. Meanwhile, further behind, we can see that Mark Arrowsmith is all over the the back of Matt Emmons. Behind them, Andrew Holmes up the whoa, goodness me, what on earth's going on there? Burnham's been turned. I believe that's in contact with Bennyworth, and there's even more contact as Chris Daines once again is turned on the exit of turn number 4, and he's just having no luck in this third race of the evening. It's all going so horribly wrong for Chris Daines, as meanwhile we look here and it's a jump to the pits for Chris Daines. I think that knocks giving damage to the car, but the point standing is that Chris Daines in the pits right now. I don't think he's going to get another shot back at this race, and that will mean that all the points he's gained in race number 1 and Jamie Dorey will be lost in race number 3, if not more. As meanwhile, making their way down into turn 9, you can see Jamie Dorey trying to go around the outside to inside versus Gavan Gardener, Daines' teammate, as they roll the way through turn number 10 up towards 11, but no way through here as that pressure is being mounted. But we've got a lot to understand what exactly happened there in a short period of time, as meanwhile drivers make the way on around. But as they do, heading through corner turn number 12 here, it is the case that Emmons under that pressure from Aerosmith as they make the way through, but in this case Aerosmith's a bit further back, and now Emmons snaking into turn number 13. We just need to avoid losing the rear of the car, and he can stay with this battle in front and he'll be comfortable. But we ride on board with Jamie Dorey here, who looks to the move for B3. So as they make the way up towards turn number 1 here, Dorey's going to be made to look around the outside versus the Audi RS3 of Gavan Gardener as they head into the right-hander here, and as they roll the way through, it's side by side all the way through. But as they manage, Dorey takes to the grass, and that's going to give Gavan Gardener the return up the inside here. And as they make the way under brake, and where you can see by comparison, that is Matt Emmons, who's right behind the pair of them right now. But Dorey trying to hang around the outside to inside here as they head up towards turn number 3. And as they roll into the left-hander here, will Gavan Gardener on the outside, trying to hang it on around like Dorey did through turn number 1, but Gardner just does not have the ability to carry as much speed in the Audi versus the Honda on that outside line. But he's still going to have the run around the outside up towards turn 4 here, and Dorey's going to have to go all in on the brakes as they make the way through the corner. But Gavan Gardener getting his teeth out here, biting in hard to this P3. He wants it just as much as Dorey, and Gavan Gardener really fighting as they make the way into turn 5 and gets back ahead. A nice return pass there from Gavan Gardener up into P3. Matt Emmons meanwhile all over the back of these two, but remember he's leading the Prime class here, and I think his focus will be more on bringing home that win in the class rather than trying to pick up any more overall positions. Meanwhile, Mikey Doble's just found his way past Mark Aerosmith. He's up into P7 now as Mikey Doble, as he rolls his way through, having come from P10, and he continues on his charge up through the field as he makes his way down the back straight. But as we look from him to Lee Horn behind, chasing after Ben Bennyworth, and there's been a coming together between them. We'll talk more about that very shortly. Gavan Gardener here, we look back up to the battle for P3. He's keeping Jamie Dorey behind as they roll the way through 9 and 10, but again at any moment this battle could only amplify in terms of the intensity of the side-by-side action. But whilst we do have a brief breather, we take a look back at what exactly happened into turn at number 4 after the safety car restart. Well, it was John Burnham then, you can see here on the inside, getting it very wrong and locking up. And then as they made the way out to the corner, well, Daines in contact there with Matthew Addy, but Burnham just going in a bit too hot on the corner and having to return. But meanwhile, we try and get a better camera angle exactly what happened from the blimp camera here. You see Burnham overextended, Bennyworth cut up the inside there, Doble in a bit of a squeeze with what was Brown and Daines, and then Daines, well, it's the case much like on the opening lap when the safety car was triggered, just being caught there by a driver, and it all going so wrong, and Matthew Addy being the driver he got caught with there. But we return to those live pictures now, and it is the case all being triggered off by Burnham just simply going a bit too hot on the inside into turn at number 4. Not to say all the blame lies with Burnham there, but that's what started the domino effect. But return to the live pictures with 7.5 minutes on the clock here. We can see that Lee Horn right now putting that pressure on Ben Bennyworth, and I think at this point Ben Bennyworth is not going to be gaining any more places with Lee Horn putting so much pressure on as they head into turn number 4 here. On the brakes they go, and will Lee Horn up the inside versus Bennyworth. Bennyworth deciding to stay to the outside and trying to cut it back round, but I don't think Bennyworth's going to get this as they make the way out of the corner and up towards Hamilton Bend. And if anything, Bennyworth's lost that place, and now he's got Matthew Addy for company behind. Of course, Lee Horn and Addy both pro drivers, whereas Bennyworth is a prime driver, so it's only an overall position loss. But the point standing is that Mark Aerosmith is only 2 seconds up the road from the pair, and if Aerosmith has got the ability to keep Lee Horn behind him, then that will really help out in taking that P2 in the prime class here in this final race of today. Meanwhile, looking to your prime leader, here is Matt Emmons. Now he's got Mikey Doble over the back of him. I think Emmons will be smart here and just let Doble go as they make the way into turn 9. He does indeed, and as they make the way into 10, now Andrew Holmes is closing up here, and Emmons may want to keep an eye on the delta in terms of pace between himself and Aerosmith as to whether he lets Holmes go or whether he tries to dig digging and keep Holmes behind. If he feels like he's got the pace to outrun Aerosmith, no, I'd suggest he does let Holmes go. Of course, he can't hear me right now, but it is the case. That would be my suggestion as the driver. You've got to play your cards here. Edmonds, of course, with a chance to bring home a win in the Pro Class, something which he has not seen in quite some time. That's not to belittle him, that's just the way the results have gone. And here today, he can turn that back around as they make the way across the timeline onto what will be lap number 7. But as they roll the way through here, it is the case that Lee Horn still in hot pursuit of Mark Aerosmith. And meanwhile, it's the case. What on earth has happened here? We've got Rob McGregor of it at distance. He rejoins, and surely not. Oh, goodness me. And what was there? I do believe Jamie Dorey having to literally dice the car around Rob McGregor, and that was very close to tears for Jamie Dorey. And he's already had one moment where it's gone very wrong in the run from 1 to 2. He doesn't want that twice. But Jamie Dorey now behind Mikey Doble, and Doble being given an opportunity to make his way up multiple positions there by simply seizing the opportunity and not having to force a move. But as they make the way in towards turn number 4 right now, I think Dorey will tuck in behind Doble and respect the fact that Doble does seem to have that pace right now, and there's no need to battle with his teammate. But as they make the way out the corner, Mark Aerosmith side by side here with Lee Horn through turn number 4. Aerosmith still ahead as they make the way out of turn number 4. You can see Lee Horn scrambling for the position here as they make the way into turn 5, trying to get on the inside into 5 for P8, but Aerosmith not letting him have that run. As they make the way under braking here into turn number 6 and 7. Aerosmith being very smart here. He's trying to bury Lee Horn on the outside and take all the pace out of the car by parking it on apex. And this is what you need to do as Aerosmith. You need to make Lee Horn struggle out the corner because he's got Bennyworth and also what is there Addy behind. But now it's a drag race between the two Honda Civics as they make the way out towards turns 9 and 10. Aerosmith will, of course, have track position to his advantage, but Lee Horn on the outside as they come underneath the billboard. Who's going to emerge the braver of the two under braking? Well, it's Aerosmith there. And Lee Horn right now will now, oh goodness me, and Aerosmith onto the grass. The camera didn't really show that, but Lee Horn will gain the place in the end. But now he's got Bennyworth right behind him as Aerosmith has just taken a little bit too much grass. And meanwhile, we do take a look back at what happened to Rob McGregor at the start of this lap. Well, I do believe it was a simple run off track into turn 1. In fact, drifted into the corner. I think the rear left tyre did touch the grass very briefly on entry. And as he rejoined here, well, you're going to see the cat-like reflexes of Jamie Dorey as he came on through and just about dodging the contact there, but that was very close between the two of them. And Mikey Doble simply saying, well, I'll take the 2 places, thank you, if the space is on the inside for me. But as we return to those live pictures now, 4 minutes plus the final lap to go here, and was a bit of a diminished race number 3 due to the safety car needing to be deployed. But it is the case, once we've got less laps, we've still got plenty of quality action. And as our drivers make the way down and around now, and we return to these live pictures, it is John Higgins Senior who finds himself leading, but there's only one thorn in his side which may prevent that win. Well, in fact, 2 thorns in his side. He's got Gavan Gardener closing up behind him, and it is the case that whilst they both set their personal best last time out, they're nearly identical in pace, and if there's any momentum drop by either of them, it could cause this battle to sway. And secondly, Mikey Doble is bearing down. He's just set the fastest lap of the race at 59.1, taking a 10th out the pair of them on the previous lap, and if he continues with this pace, he'll be right there towards the very end. But meanwhile, Ben Bennyworth here battling with Lee Horn into what is turn number 5, and as they make the way out towards 6 right now, it does look as though Lee Horn's got back ahead of Bennyworth, and Matthew Addy taking a look out the inside. He can't quite find it into turn 6 and 7 or Oggie's corner, and as they make the way on out right now, it is the case that Matthew Addy having to wait, and Mark Sykes will, despite that absolutely horrendous way to end a dream start to his race on lap number 1. It is the case he's running P3 in the Pro class right now, P11, and if he can get past Ben Bennyworth, that will be P2. But you can see here Bennyworth looking to make the return move on Lee Horn, who defends the inside into turn 9, and Bennyworth sweeps around the outside there under braking, gets it done nicely, and Lee Horn loses the rear of the car, and as a result, that's going to release Matthew Addy up a place, and Mark Sykes as well, and John Burnham comes on through here. So Lee Horn with an error, much like we saw only moments ago, it is the case at turn number 10, he's been caught out. Meanwhile, Gavan Gardener is now battling with Higgins and also Doble for the lead. It's a three-way fight down towards turn number 1, Gardener in the middle of the road, Higgins on the inside, Doble on the outside, and as they head into Rich's corner here, who's going to come out on top? I think Doble's going to swing it round the outside, but Gardner's not going to give this up here. He's going to dig deep, the Rhino Motorsport driver, as he hits that apex curve high, and as they make the way down towards Wilson hairpin at turn 2, it's the case that Gardner's still defending hard as they roll their way through corner apex. Doble's made to go the long way round here, and Gardner seals the door to get to the inside into turn number 3. That's critical for Gardner, because we have seen time and time again how much speed that Honda can take from turn 2 to 3. And as they make the way out the corner, now Gardner's got to worry about the fact that Doble's going to have the momentum into 4. And you can see here Gardner making Doble had to work for that inside line. And then he opens it back out, thinking that Doble's not going to be there. But surprise, surprise, Doble goes all in on the brakes. And as they roll the way through turn 4 and up towards 5, Doble's got his nose in there, but he backs out into Hamilton corner 9. He's got a long straight coming up. He doesn't need to fight it into Hamilton Orgies at turns 5 through to 6 and 7. But he's going to go for the move early here into turn 6. There's contact between the two of them. And I think there, Doble trying to get Gardner to go deep, but Gardner not falling for it. And as they make the way through turn number 8 right now, Doble going all in on the inside. Gardner makes to go around the outside here, and that's a drag race. It's Honda versus Audi in the long run down the back straight. We've got Higgins Senior behind. We're not sure what started this all off, but we're loving to see how it all ends. And as Doble here, he's got his nose ahead briefly, but Gardner's got the inside into turn 9. Doble opens up the door now, and as they roll the way through, the two drivers contest turn number 10. Doble takes a lot of apex curb. It raises the car onto 2 wheels, and Gardner emerges right now ahead, only by nose. It just about stays ahead through bomb hole corner at turn number 11. But as they roll the way through and up towards turn number 12, look at the pack behind. They've all congregated together, and they'll be going on to one more lap after this. It's going to be fireworks at the final lap. As we see, we've got P1 through to P6, only separated by 2 seconds. And as they make their way out of the corner, it's the case heading all the way out towards turn number 1 right now. Gardner is having to hold on for one more lap, but he's got it all to do. Ahead of Doble, ahead of Higgins Senior, ahead of Dorey, McGregor and Holmes. And as they make their way into 1, Gardner's got to just literally park the car on every apex right now and hope that everybody else wants to battle Doble as they make their way down towards 2. Doble squirms the outside in the end. Meanwhile, Gardner defends the inside here, and you can see Gardner trying to lean on Doble slightly there to keep Doble out, to keep him on a non-optimal line as they make their way up into 3. Gardner's passed the first test, but now here comes the second nasty test. Can he hold on in the run to turn number 4 and through the corner? We ride on board the gearbox here of Gavan Gardener as he makes his way down, defends the inside here. Doble, meanwhile, looking to potentially cut back, but you can see that he can't find the space. And as they make the way under braking, meanwhile, coming out the corner, Gardner doesn't quite get it hooked up on exit, but he's got the acceleration, the Audi. That's the one thing the Audi can be counted on. He can go through that gearbox fast. And as they make the way through Hamilton at turn 5, right now making the way all the way up towards turn 6 and 7. Doble this time does not try and force the issue to turn number 6. He knows, he's learned from the last lap, it doesn't work like that. Instead, he waits to pounce once again. And as they make the way through, he's going to look up the inside into turn 8, but I think this is very bold, and Gardner's forced out a little bit wide here. And as they make the way down the back straight, well, Doble immediately covers him off, but you can imagine Gardner's now going to come back. Thinking as though he's been elbowed down, he'll want to try and get his elbows in there as well. As they head down the back straight here, only a couple more corners to go. Doble defends the inside, Gardner pinned to the outside as they make the way end up breaking here into turns 9 and 10. They stay as they were as they make their way out of turn number 8, and Doble is ahead. Higgins Senior behind in P3 is holding off Jamie Dorey right now. Rob McGregor in P5, and as they make the way through the last couple of corners here, we've got Andrew Holmes in P6, but there's no change behind the leaders. And as they make the way through the last couple of corners here, Doble's breaking away right now. I think he's got it done. He rolls his way to the final corner, and as he emerges on out, he will take a third and final consecutive checker flag here today. Mikey Doble is your winner in race number 3 on the final lap. Then it's Gavan Gardener P2, followed by John Higgins Senior P3, Jamie Dorey P4, Andrew Holmes P5, Rob McGregor and then P6, and it will be Matt Evans P7 who takes the win in the Pro-Am class. Brilliant drive there from the Next Gen Racing green driver. Ben Bennyworth P8, and that'll be P2 in the Pro-Am class there. Great work and recovery from Ben Bennyworth. Matthew Addy P9, Leon completes the top 10 overall, and then it's John Burnham who takes the last podium slot for the Pro-Am class there in P11 ahead of Mark Sykes, and Josh Brown completes the order there on the lead lap with Mark Harrismith retiring and Chris Daines retiring. And well, as Gavan Gardener makes his way all around right now, I think for him, he'll feel as though he was elbowed out a little bit right at the end there in the run through turn at number 8. Of course, we do expect there to be contact between our touring car racing class cars, so I'll be interested to see how that one is looked upon if it does get reported. But Doble in the end found that he needed to come through at turn number 8 and make it a drag race all the way down towards turns 9 and 10. But to give credit to Gavan Gardener, he dug deep, and that P2 is well deserved, there's no doubt about that. But as he peels on off and parks on up, it is the case we now take a look to those race results, subject to any stewards' inquiries. So in the end, after another race of 20 minutes, will indeed cut down to about 15 minutes given the safety car, it is the case that Mikey Doble taking a third consecutive win on his return to the series in round number 7 here of the Next Gen Racing Touring Car Championship at Snetterton, ahead of Gavan Gardener, and then John Higgins Senior taking third place overall and on the pro podium. Jamie Dorey and Andrew Holmes complete the top 5. Ahead of Rob McGregor P6. Matt Emmons P7 in the end, taking home the win in the prime class. Ahead of Ben Bennyworth in P8, Matthew Addy P9 and Lee Horn completing the top 10. And then John Burnham completes the prime podium of Emmons, Bennyworth and himself, finishing P11 there. Mark Sykes P12, very unfortunate. Would be interested to see if it were not for the opening lap incident, how it could have gone for Mark Sykes. But still, plenty more races to go and plenty more potential reverse grid poles to come. Josh Brown P13 and then Mark Arrowsmith retiring 4 laps from end in P14, and Chris Daines retiring on lap number 3 due to the contact that was made, of course, between himself and the drivers coming out to turn number 4. Wasn't to be his day for Chris Daines today at Snetterton, but still plenty more rounds to come and still plenty more points on the board. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, it is now time for us to get ready for our post-round interviews with our selected drivers. We'll be back in approximately 5 minutes or so for those. Don't go anywhere, because if you enjoyed the race in action, you're sure to enjoy hearing the thoughts of our drivers who join us in the interview room. We'll be back shortly. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we're due to kick off our post-round interviews with our select drivers, and it is the case as he joins me in the interview room. It's Mikey Doble first and foremost up after a return. We've eagerly awaited his return. Mikey, fantastic racing from yourself tonight, no doubt about that, on your return to take 3 wins on the bounce plus pole position as well. It must be the perfect way to return to the series, surely.
Yeah, well, the results don't come much better than that, I must say. I was out of the series for a little bit longer than intended. I thought when I'd won 3 races at Donington way back at round 1, I thought I'd be having a couple of weeks off and I'd be back for Alton Park. But unfortunately, with some damage to my PC at home, that didn't allow me to return on that day, sadly. And then the dates just haven't fallen out in my favour since then. So yeah, I'm glad to be back, and it's a great way to come back as well. 3 wins.
Oh, most definitely. And we love to have you back. And what a way to start off with Snetterton and with that pole position. And just take us through, given the fact you're able to take that pole in the end by a good couple of attempts, did it just feel as though the car was in its prime, the Honda? Is this a circuit you absolutely enjoy? Because it just looked as though it was an unstoppable combination, yourself and the car.
Yeah, I've always got on well with this track. I love it in real life. I love it on the sim as well. And I think I think the Audi's got a good 1 lap pace. I mean, I wouldn't say that the 1 lap pace is the strength of the Honda, but in races 1 and 2, when I was getting into a nice rhythm, I was able to lap within sort of 2 or 3 tenths of my qualifying time throughout the race, which I think says a lot about how good the Honda is to race with. So yeah, I mean, I think it was near enough the perfect lap in qualifying. I like the track anyway, so I think someone was going to have to do something pretty special to out qualify me in that session.
Oh, indeed. And then taking it forward into race number 1, of course, we saw the battle of the launches between yourself and Chris Daines off the line. Daines did seem to get a slightly better launch in terms of the Audi's launch control from first to second gear, but you just edged him in the run through turns 1 and 2. Just take us through what it was like having to really deal with that launch, because we've seen that Chris has been phenomenal with starts all year round.
Yeah, I mean, the Audi is a very fast car off the line anyway, and Chris is obviously a quick driver, so that combination, he was always going to get a good start. But it was just about keeping my car somewhat up the inside into turn 1. I tried to be fair. Yeah, I could have driven it in harder and maybe running wide coming out the corner, but left him enough room as long as I had the inside for the hairpin, and I could just keep it neat and tidy on the inside and then just focus on getting the traction down coming out the hairpins, which is a place that the Honda is strong. And then in both races, I was able to sort of come out of there in front. And then obviously race 2 was slightly different with Jamie overtaking us both to take the lead, which was exciting while it lasted. But yeah, it's just about keeping your car in the right place really through turns 1 and 2.
Oh, indeed. And you were chased very heavily throughout the entirety of race number 1 by Chris Daines. And you mentioned there about the fact that Honda does have that strength and the traction out the corners. Just curious, because we saw continually over the course of the first 20 minutes of racing, yourself and Chris exchanging lap times back and forth as if you're exchanging shares on the market stock floor. What was that experience like in terms of every time you seemed to set a fast lap, Chris Daines would set something a little bit faster and you up the ante the next lap just to keep him at bay?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't really go any faster. I was driving to a pace that I knew I wouldn't make a mistake, but I was driving as fast as I can to try and manage the gap. I don't think he ever got the gap lower than about 4 tenths of a second, which for me is bearable because when you've got someone on your bumper and it makes you have to defend into the corner. So I never actually had to defend throughout that race. I was able to take my racing line, and he was sort of hanging on to me. So fair play. Obviously, there is quite a bit of slipstream involved around this track, so sometimes you can keep up with people even if you're a couple of attempts a lap slower. Not suggesting that was the case, but he didn't get close enough to ever force me offline to have to defend. So in that instance, it wasn't too pressurized once I got used to it.
Oh, indeed. And then rolling forward to race number 2, of course, we saw the close battle at the start between yourself and Chris, and then arrives another competitor in the form of Jamie Dorey. And we mentioned a moment ago how he managed to get into lead, and then you were battling from that P3 position. But just take us through your perspective of the major incident in the run through turns 1 and 2, midway through the race, where we saw Chris and Jamie come together, and it really just opened up the door for you to siphon up the inside.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, me and Jamie are in the same team in the teams championship in this series. So, with me being away for quite a few weeks and Adam no longer being able to take part, it was quite crucial that we both scored good points tonight to try and keep somewhat at the top of the championship. So, I'd be lying if I said the beginning of the second race wasn't slightly theatrical and that I was trying to allow Jamie to come past Chris, not necessarily past me, but it worked out that way. And then Chris managed to become savvy to what was going on and actually got past me. And I think it was shaping up to be a great race, but it's just a shame that coming out of turn one, the cars are so on the limit out of there, running close to the grass that Chris just lost control slightly and come across into the path of Jamie, and they both went exit stage right. But after that, it was just about trying to put the lap times in and see if I could match the pace I was doing in race one.
Oh, indeed. And you did, in the end, bring home another great win. And then coming on to race number 3, I have to ask, when we announced, because we've typically seen it's been the lower numbers of the grid, so P6 through to P9, but when we did announce it's P10 for reverse grid pole, did you have any thoughts run through your mind, or was it a case of a shrug of the shoulders? Right, we've got a job to do.
Oh, I thought that was great. Obviously, the more reverse the grid was, in my opinion, I guess the more exciting the race was going to be. And especially with that safety car, it took me the full 20 minutes of the race to get into a position to challenge for the lead, which I think at the end there was about 5 or 6 of us all in a train. So for people watching, that's what you want to see. And it's got to be one of the highlights of the season so far, I think. I mean, that race, the battle at the end, had a great battle with Gavan, both giving each other room. We had sort of half a lap for about side by side onto the second to last lap. So it's great racing and good to see people giving each other respect on, in the series and everything.
Oh, most definitely. And tunneling into that battle between yourselves, as you say, it was a six-way fight for the win right at the end there. It was a case from yourselves all the way down to Andrew Holmes battling for the lead. But we did see it did require a little bit of nuance coming out of turns 6 and 7 up into what was Williams' corner at turn number 8 in the end to make your way on through. But we saw a lap before you did try and force the move through Oggie's corner. It didn't quite work. Just what led to you thinking you've got to get it done into turn number 8?
Well, I thought that once you come onto the back straight and then you get into the tricky braking zone for Nelson, it's all pretty single file through there, through into the last corner and onto the straight. So I thought if the move was going to happen, it had to happen in the twisty stuff before you got onto the back straight. So I thought if I could just get a nose up the inside onto the Williams corner before you go onto the back straight and then just stand my ground on the racing line, I could get a better exit and just try and get clear. And I just about managed to get clear with a fingernail's width between us, I believe, and then he got get a bit of my slipstream down the back straight, so I had to make a couple of defensive manoeuvres. But in the end, I got into the braking zone ahead of him, into under the Nelson Bridge, and that was that from there, really.
Oh, indeed. And then after you'd made the move, bringing it home to make it 3 out of 3, which was fantastic throughout. And given the fact that you're back now full of momentum and carrying on from where you left off at Donington, I have to ask, how you feeling for Monza in a week's time, or Italian Thruxton as we could call it?
Yeah, slightly nervous actually about Monza. I think the slipstream is going to play have a big impact around there. So I think the racing is going to be super close. Um, as you know, there's some very heavy braking zones around Monza. Lots of opportunities to overtake, but lots of opportunities to get it wrong as well. So I'm sure it's going to be interesting.
Oh, indeed. And we look forward to seeing how you get on in a week's time at the Monza circuit. But before we do let you go, Mikey, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to on the broadcast tonight?
Yeah, mum and dad watching downstairs, I believe, along with my two brothers. Grandparents watching from home. Any other family members? Got auntie and uncle possibly still watching if they haven't switched off by now. Um, and yeah, thanks for another great broadcast. We'll see you next week.
Oh, I'm sure they'll appreciate Mikey, and I do appreciate the compliment as well. But thank you for joining us in the interview room. Congratulations on your triplet of wins once again upon your return, and we look forward to seeing you in a week's time.
Thank you, Paul.
So hearing that from our triple race winner of Mikey Doble over the course of the preceding night, delivering an absolutely fantastic run of form. There's no doubt about that. But in terms of other drivers who had a fantastic run of form towards the end of the preceding night, we should of course give credit to John Higgins Senior, who we'll be bringing in very shortly, who whilst it didn't quite work out to begin with, definitely started to build up the pace as we went deeper and deeper into the races this evening. And well, we'll very shortly bring him on in to that interview room. In fact, he is ready and he joins us now. So as he joins us in the interview room, John, a mixed run of fortunes tonight after an absolutely brilliant time at Knockhill a week ago, but it did look as though the car was coming together towards the end of the evening. A P11 in race 1, a P6 in race 2, and a P3 in race number 3. A good way to wrap up the evening at Snetterton?
I think it was a good way to wrap up, Paul, but that thing was horrific round there tonight. You just cannot find the balance with the car at all. If it's hot, you have to run a lot more front bias, which is very odd. And if the track's cooler, then you have to dial the bias pretty much back to sort of 50-50, which is not really how the game has sort of set the whole thing up. And yeah, just couldn't find it, didn't get into a groove at all tonight. Didn't, in practice managed to dip into the 59s for the first time. And you think, okay, game on. And then in quali, just never ever got it together. You put yourself in the danger zone. We're starting at the back, and did some practice starts on the auto clutch thing, and I'm fortunate enough that I've got a set of pedals with a clutch pedal, so I decided, let's go with the clutch tonight. And I don't know what happened at that start. On a normal start on an auto clutch where you just pull the paddle when the green light goes, you're on full revs on the rev limiter, and it goes. But I dropped the clutch and it was still wheel spinning going into fourth gear, and then it gripped, and it was, I'm pulling the gears trying to limit the wheel spin, and it just, I don't know whether it's something going on with the game or I don't know, but and then you get absolutely drilled in the side. I ended up with a load of damage, the wheels at like Q2, and you're trying to get through it. And then obviously second race was a bit better, and then third race, the car felt pretty good, to be fair, at the start. Me and Rob obviously get into the lead, and well, he's leading, I'm second, and my car started to come alive, and I was chatting to Rob and just said, look, you're holding me up a little bit here, dude. And then, he ended up going wide at turn 1, and that let me through into the lead. And you think, right, okay, and every lap you're just dialing the brake bias forward, just probably 0.2% each lap, and the lap before I dropped it to drop to third place, it stepped out sideways going into turn 1, and it was like, do I dial it forward? And it was like, no, we've got a bit of a gap here, just make sure you hit your marks, hit your braking marks, you'll be fine. And coming around corner, brake, it goes sideways, and at that point it's all over. But then you've got the alien, who is Mikey Doble, back with us, who is he's just in a different class, that boy, you know what I mean? It was just, but I think we were just talking about it in the chat before I came on, and I'm waffling on now, but I think the last 3 laps of that race, don't know how it looked on the stream, but to be involved in it, that was pretty special.
Oh, indeed. And well, it is the case. Whilst Doble did seem to have the pace of his own in terms of class, we still got to see you and your teammate Rob McGregor putting in a brilliant battle in right at the end there in race number 3, and really the highlight of the evening, if I can get my words correct, for all concerned there, and the 6-way fight for the win. And I do have to ask, despite the fact that there's the ongoing struggles with regards to Elantra in terms it just does not want to seem to be tameable for yourself and also your teammate, at the same time you guys are getting your heads down and continuing to deliver. What gives you guys the ability to keep your heads up from race to race? Because there's always that continued run of improvement. And of course, last time out Knockhill we saw that brilliant set of results, but today it didn't start off well, but it ended on a great high for both yourself and Rob.
No, you just got to keep digging with it, Paul, haven't you? You can't let your head go down, and Okay, there was probably only, 14, 15 cars tonight. So, yeah, you've just got to keep digging and just keep trying to hit your marks. But, we thought we were going to be really strong after Knockhill last week, coming into Snetterton, which has two massive long straights, which you think is really going to suit the Hyundai. It just never got going, and I'm not sure if you bring in Robin for an interview after this, but he'll tell you the same. The car was just so inconsistent. You hit the brakes in the same place and it wants to be sideways, but then you hit the brakes in the same place on the next lap, and it's fine. It just, I don't know. It's really difficult, and it just felt really edgy. But you've got to drive it. The car didn't feel particularly, although it was fast at Knockhill, it didn't feel comfortable for me. So look, we are where we are. We chose that car. I think there's a lot of conversations going on prior to this as well about how the Hyundais are so much overpowered to everything else. And well, I'll tell you something. Go and jump in one and go and do a practice session, because I think people will change their minds after that, because that car is not OP compared to everybody else. So, but yeah, as a racing driver, whether real life or online, you learn that it doesn't matter what it chucks at you. You've got to keep digging, because Mikey and Gavin could have ended up taking themselves out towards the end there, and you end up winning the race. So you've just got to keep at it and keep digging, and that's what we'll keep doing all the way to Brands Hatch GP. So.
Oh, indeed, and I must admit, on a personal level, that's the mentality I love to hear. And speaking of looking to keep on digging and digging out those results, we head to the Italian version of Thruxton in a week's time, which is Monza for the purposes of this series. How are you feeling for the circuit, which is just as much straights as it is heavy braking zones?
Well, I'm not going to say we're going to be strong there, because I've said that at a couple of tracks this year, and we've gone there and the car's been absolutely trash. Done a lot of laps around Monza, not in the touring car, in GT3 cars and stuff. The first chicane is always a nightmare. It doesn't matter whether you're racing for fun online or whatever, or whether you jump on ACC or whatever. It doesn't matter. Whenever you race at Monza, the first chicane is an absolute nightmare, because you've obviously got you're arriving at it at really high speed. It's going to take a lot of respect from everybody at Monza to respect that and appreciate that, and just not go diving in, because if they do that, they'll completely wreck the spectacle. And if everybody's got the game head on that night, I think Monza will probably produce some of the best racing we see this season around there, because it's not massively technical. You've obviously got the two really tight chicanes. The rest of it's pretty easy. But it's going to be about drafting, and it's going to be about pushing people, and particularly when you get the runs out onto the straights, is positioning yourself properly. But it all comes down to the real heavy braking areas and making sure people have got the game heads on and just not overcommitting themselves. And if they do that, it'll be fantastic. If they don't do that, yeah, it'll end up as a bit of a cluster.
Well, fingers crossed for the former rather than the latter, John. But before we do let you go, is there anybody you'd like to say a thank you to or give a shout out to live on the broadcast this evening?
Just my partner, Gemma. She's been really patient with me. Trying to find my feet with this thing over the last 7 months. It takes up a great deal of spare time, and she's in bed at the moment, probably watching the telly. She's not watching this. She's probably watching Housewives of Cheshire or something on the TV. But yeah, she allows me the time, and I am really grateful for that, because I have quite an addictive personality. When I first started racing, you want to be good at it, and it's the same with the online thing. It's taken me some time, and we will eventually get there. Are we there yet? No, not by any means. It's not consistent enough, and that was one of my strengths when I raced real life, is I was really consistent in lap time, and I'm really struggling to do it on this, but it will come, and it'll come through practice and time. And It's only the time that she allows me to do that without chucking a teddy out the pram and stuff. So, Gemma, I love you, girl, and just thanks for allowing me to do this.
Oh, well, I'm sure she will appreciate those kind words, and indeed, it's those little sacrifices of time which do go a long way. And as you say, just getting your head down and being able to work your way around the car and continue to move towards where you're aiming to be in terms of the consistency with the car and getting to grips with it. And there's no doubt it will come as time presses on. But with that, John, thank you very much for joining us in the interview room as always. Congratulations on your results today, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit at Monza in a week's time.
Thanks, buddy. Ciao.
Hearing there from our second interview of the evening, John Higgins Senior there, the pro driver who had that mixed run of form over the course of the evening with, what's that, 11th in race number 1, that 6th in race number 2, and then that 3rd place in race number 3. It's the case that, as you were saying there, just couldn't quite get the car to hook up, particularly in the early stages, but started to find a bit of balance with the car towards the end. But even when out front leading in race number 3 after Rob McGregor fell off circuit, it was the case there was still a situation where the car did start to bite back, and in a manner that was unexpected. And, well, the more time the team at HSR get behind the car, including John himself, they'll be able to find those jigsaw pieces which are missing, and when they put them into the puzzle, it will be the case they may start to find and realise exactly what the car needs in order to be maximised to its potential. But still, let's not take away from the fact that John and indeed his teammates at HSR are pushing hard day in, day out, week in, week out, and the results they're getting are a sign of how much effort is going on in. But coming from one driver who's putting a lot of effort to another driver who may likely feel that tonight was a huge amount of effort in order to wrangle the results he needed out of Snetterton, it is the case we now come to Jamie Dorey, who joins us in the interview room. And as he joins us now, Jamie, a very mixed evening of racing today. A 3rd place in race number 1, a 15th place in race number 2, and then a 4th place in race number 3, and a dramatic end to proceedings in race number 3. How do you feel your evening at Snetterton has gone?
Yeah, ups and downs, like you say. It's the whole Turkerton-esque approach to the championship didn't go too well in race 2. Yeah, just trying to bag points, not necessarily wins, and just try and keep my rivals within touching distance so they're not taking too many points off. But yeah, no, race 1 wasn't too bad, considering I was struggling a lot with the Honda. Race 2 obviously ended up in the barrier, and race 3, great battling with a good group of guys. So yeah, not too bad, but take it.
Oh, indeed. And just diving into the detail a little bit, in qualifying, lined up 3rd on the grid, half a second off of Chris Daines and a further 2 tenths off of Mikey Doble on pole. Obviously, we've had the return of Mikey Doble from his long hiatus from the series, and he's back now as your teammate, so therefore not all the pressure's on yourself with Adam Delman unable to make the rest of the series as I'm to understand it. Did you feel as though qualifying was the best you and then widely the team could achieve, or was there more out there?
Well, there's always more if I'm in P3 and Mikey's in P1. We've we were just speaking about it then. Obviously, depending on track, depending on days, we could be quite closely paced. Yeah, he just came up with something I didn't have. I don't know whether it's still me trying to adapt to the update in the cars, or he's got the gift, isn't he? So I need to try and find it at the bottom of my bag somewhere.
Well, he may have the gift, but you do have the dogged resilience to be able to deliver the results round after round. And we did see at race number 1 that 3rd place in that close battle between what was yourself, Mikey Doble, and Chris Daines. Albeit it did look as though you were looking more rearward as the race went on rather than forward there. Just take us through your race number 1 in terms of trying to keep that pace and keep it consistent with the leaders.
Well, race 1 into the hairpin turn 2, I got hit quite hard by Lee that knocked my steering out of alignment. So taking any right-hander was fun to say the least. I was fine at left-handers. So for the first 3 laps, I was trying to understand how the balance had changed, obviously with slightly damaged steering. So Matthew Addy kind of got near me, and then I kind of understood the car, and just kind of settled into a bit of a rhythm. They were already 4 seconds ahead at that point. So it was just trying to bring it home on the podium. Like I said, keeping Chris quite close to me because of the points, and Gavan within, behind me, and take what I could really with a dog-eared car.
Oh, indeed. And well, in the end, getting that third place, making sure that Chris did not gain too many points on you. And then coming on to race number 2, of course, a very dramatic start to the race with the three of you. So yourself, Daines and Doble all battling throughout the opening couple of laps. And unfortunately, it ended in tears a couple of laps later on the exit of turn number 1. Just take us through it from your perspective.
Yeah, so me and Mikey are obviously in communications, and we were doing a team-esque approach, really. It's quite nice having Mikey as a wingman and vice versa. We were just, yeah, the Honda takes so long to get its tyres up to 10. It takes about 3 laps to fully dial out the understeer. I was really struggling with that around this track for some reason. Obviously, Mikey was doing what he was to help me get a bit of a lead, try and get into a bit of a rhythm. Obviously, lap 2, lap 3, I can't remember which one it was. Chris had managed to get round the outside of me into turn 1. Came fairly close to me. I'd take a bit of curb, and to be honest, I haven't looked at it in too much detail. I just felt a hit on the front left and then into a barrier. I don't know what's happened. I'll have to have a little look, but yeah, I'm not going to comment with something I don't know what's happened.
Oh, that's absolutely fair play. But looking from that, of course, starting at P15 for race number 3 and having to surge your way up through the order. Of course, it was a dramatic start to race number 3 with the safety car being called out as well. But you found yourself up there and then battling in a 6-way fight for the win. Race 3 must have been a highlight from your perspective, like it has been for so many drivers today.
Yeah, race 3 was good. I mean, starting P15, I knew I had to just keep lap 1 fairly clean. By the time we finished the end of lap 1, waiting for the safety car, I was P5. So, 10 places in the opening lap. I'm not going to squibble about that. Obviously, yeah, from then it was just a case of trying to, again, just bag the points. I'm not doing any audacious moves. I'm trying to make drivers think I will. But in the back of my mind, as we're getting towards the end of the season, the championships looming ever closer, and it's always niggling there that I'm not going to throw the car up the inside, and it's quite hard to race like that. It's the end of the race, that manic battle. I had 2 HSR cars. I had Higgins Senior, who's a mega at defending, and I had Rob, who will go for a move if there's a gap, which anyone would. And I'm trying to drive ahead, look for a gap in front of Higgins Senior to get on the podium, and then I've got Rob all over the back of me. I didn't have much time to breathe, but yeah, respectful racing by everyone at the front, and most of the field. It's what we do touring cars, isn't it?
Oh, indeed. That's why we do touring cars. And speaking of doing touring cars, we're, of course, in the absence of Thruxton, going to Italian Thruxton next week at Monza. How you feeling for the circuit that is just as much straights as it is braking zones?
Well, I'll let you know, but all I know is that Elantra and Audi are bloody quick down the straights. I've said this from day dot. The Elantra's mega down the straight, closely followed by the Audi and then the Veloster. So the Honda's slightly underpowered compared to the rest of them. Must be its boxy shape. However, the Honda's bloody good on the brakes. So we'll see what we can do. I mean, a bit of dialing it in and another a strong point tool, that'll do me.
Oh, indeed, it is the case. If you can get those points, that championship looms ever closer, but we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out in a week's time. But just before we do let you go, Jamie, is there anybody you'd like to say thank you to live on air this evening?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to Mikey for trying to be a decent teammate. I'm glad to have him back scoring some decent points. Obviously yourself for doing the comms as always, and all of the sponsors at NXTGEN and everyone who takes part in the league. Yeah, thank you all.
I'm sure they will appreciate it. I do appreciate your kind words as well, Jamie, and I think Mikey, if he's listening right now, will appreciate the compliment from yourself to him. But with that, congratulations on your results today. Thank you for joining us in the interview room as always, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in Italy in a week's time.
Thanks, Paul. See you later.
So hearing there from Jamie Dorey, our third interview of this evening, the pro driver there in the 13 car, championship leader, and taking, as he refers to himself, a Colin Turkington-esque approach there in terms of just getting the points that he needs and keeping his rivals in arm's reach in order to try and be able to close out this championship before the final rounds, or putting himself in the best possible position to be in the lead come the season finale. But definitely a day where it has been up and down for Jamie Dorey, and it is the case there, making sure not in the end and to lose it right at the finish. And we'll have to wait and see how it all plays out in Monza, a circuit which, as we heard from John Higgins Senior in particular, is a circuit which, depending on how drivers react to the initial braking zones and whatnot, it could be great or it could be difficult for many, and we'll have to wait and see how that does play on out. But we do come to our last interview of this evening, and that is Rob McGregor. And as we bring him into the interview room now, Rob, we heard from your colleague John Higgins Senior earlier on about the troubles and tribulations of the Hyundai earlier today. But it is the case that from your own perspective, a P9 in race 1, a P7 in race 2 and a P6 in race 3, given the struggles of the car, decent results, or do you feel as though there's still a lot to be delivered?
Yeah, the car was tricky tonight. I'm not going to lie to you. Especially the first two races. Obviously, I started from the pit lane in the first race, due to a penalty. Now, granted, kind of learned from that penalty, made mistakes, move on. But yeah, the car's not what I expected it to be. There was obviously a lot of changes to the kind of balance of the performances over the week, with iRacing being updated and them going into the next week of races and stuff like that. You know, I don't think the Hyundai has been the car to beat this championship. I don't think it ever will be, sadly. But you know, it gives us guys at HSR, you know, a bit of a challenge. It's easy to win in the easiest cars. It's easiest to win, you know, in the quickest cars. The Audi and the Honda are quick cars, granted, and the Hyundai's, you know, the Veloster and the Elantra that we are driving. You know, they're great cars. They are quick cars, but we've got a lot of issues. And yeah, tonight's issue was trying to dial a brake bias again. You know, it was the same issue as we had at Knockhill, and it just wasn't comfortable. It just didn't work for us at all. So yeah, race 3 was obviously great fun, but the first two races were, it's like driving on ice for the first 5 laps, and yeah, we can't figure out a way to get around it. But that's the name of the game, you know.
Oh, indeed. And of course, focusing on your race 1 briefly, not being able to qualify and starting from the back of the field, what was your approach to race number 1? Because, of course, needing to gain as many places as possible, but doing so in a manner where you wouldn't potentially put yourself at risk. A difficult balancing act at the Snetterton circuit, given its tendency to generate very close racing.
Yeah, so Snetterton's a very kind of tight track. You know, there is a lot of passing opportunities, especially going into like your hairpins. You know, kind of third corner and the kind of fifth hairpin, before you go through Hamilton's. But yeah, tight track. You know, I never thought I'd get any further than kind of where I was in race 1, which was 17th. You know, 16th. I mean, so yeah, it was a bit tricky. But I seemed to capitalise off other people's disadvantages. For example, like Lee and Mark Sykes had a wee coming together with, I believe, Matt Emmons on the first lap. You know, so that granted me 3 positions kind of there and then. John got tagged, got kind of caught up in mistakes. You know, so that gifted me another one, and he got tagged up with Josh. So luckily that gave me 5 positions on the first lap that I didn't need to fight for. So yeah, after that it was kind of capitalising on what I could, and trying to stop the damage that had already been made with the penalty. So yeah.
Oh, indeed. Well, quite the sensible approach there, and picking up the pieces which others had left behind, because as you say, there were quite a number of incidents on the opening race. And then coming to race number 2, of course, a bit closer to your teammate John Higgins Senior. We saw the two of you running closely together, P6, P7, and then there was a swap around towards the end of the race. Race 2, a bit more of a learning race. There wasn't too much action where you were sat in the field.
Yeah, so John and I were quite close together all the way through the second race. You know, I felt like I was kind of holding him up, and I probably was. He asked me a couple of times to move over, and you know, me being the wee cocky little beggar that I am, I didn't move over. So, like, you know, I didn't feel at the time I was holding him up, but obviously, maybe in hindsight, I should have let him pass, and he could have challenged Benny for fifth. You know, granted, obviously, we were in the same car, and we were roughly around the same lap time in race 2. But I made more mistakes. I was just didn't feel comfortable. I've been going through a couple of things this week, you know, with work and stuff, so I've not been able to practice as much as I kind of wish. So dialing a brake bias setting to what I wished, I just couldn't find it. And you know, I made it. I think it was the second last lap, and I made a mistake, and I just went to John. Look, John, go up the inside, and I'll let you through, and I'll try and hold off Lee Horn, who, granted, gave his all, but he couldn't get past. So, you know, yeah, race 2 is a learning race, and there isn't much action, but you know, we came 6th and 7th, and that's good points for the championship, and you know, better points for John because he's further on in the championship and the standings than I am. And obviously, at the end of the day, me being a team player and sitting in 11th in the championship, it isn't the best. You know, I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes looking back on it now. So yeah, you know, part of me was playing a team game, but part of me made a mistake. So yeah, it's just a bit of learning. So.
Oh, indeed. But then coming from race 2, which was about learning a bit more about the car, to a race number 3, which was that frantic dash for the win right at the end, seeing you in that pack of 6 drivers battling for the win. Just take us from your perspective in terms of we had a shorter race given the safety car, and then it just seemed to be the mad scramble for the win and trying to find a way on through.
Yeah, so got a good start to be fair in the second and third race. Sorry. So yeah, got good kind of good start off the line. Got enough revs. It was kind of same again. For some reason, the Hyundai bogs, but I got off the line fairly decent this time. Got up the inside of I believe it's Ben at turn 1, and kind of just tucked in, and then got them coming out the hairpin. But yeah, it was just race 3 was great fun because, especially after the safety car, it was just, as you said, a mad rush to see who could get first. And you know, fair play to Mikey Doble for making his return. Granted, he is the best driver in this league. You know, he's a brilliant driver in real life. But yeah, it was a great fun. You know, the safety car always kind of brings up a kind of a better race. You know, everyone likes a wee bit of a tussle. I felt like the kind of elbows were out in that race. You know, a couple of times with me and Jamie Dorey. I thought there was got to be an accident, but yeah, I had great fun. Yeah, and going through from the safety car, I made that mistake at turn 1, 2 laps after the safety car, and my heart fell into my heart fell into my mouth. I was just like, I was so gutted because I was saying to Jamie and just when we were chatting there, waiting for to be dragged into the interview room, it's gotten because both my teammates have had podiums this year. Well, this season in this league, so to be the only one that's sitting without a podium, it kind of feels a bit hard. But yeah, obviously I couldn't win. I tried everything to get past Jamie and try and get that third place, but it just wasn't to happen. So.
Oh, indeed. But your time will come, Rob. There's no doubt about that.
For sure, man. I'm trying to stay positive. Jamie's given me some good feedback, and Mikey as well. So, we'll go into the the next race at Monza, I believe, higher spirit, kind of spirits. You know, and hopefully I can get a bit more practice, and you know, but I'm sure my time will come. It's just when and where. You know, it's a big waiting game. A lot of the time with racing, it's a big waiting game. So yeah, wait a bit longer and see what happens. But you know, I'm going for a different approach now. Maybe not after obviously getting the penalty. Maybe not be so aggressive, and you know, I feel like a lot of the time I'm being too aggressive to kind of, you know, make up for the positions that I lose. So I then make more accidents. So yeah, maybe a bit of a more relaxed Rob going forward, I think. And yeah, let's see what that brings for Monza.
Oh, indeed. And speaking of Monza, your thoughts on our Italian equivalent of Thruxton?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Again, we'll just have to see. We'll have to do a bit of practice with the HSR lads. You know, the luxury of the fact of tonight was that John wasn't here. You know, John Junior. So that was a luxury for me, not to hear him moaning about how rubbish the car is, and you know, just wanting to end it. But yeah, he wasn't here to get the points. So if I could give him my points, I would. But because I'm not in the championship. But going forward to Monza, yeah, the three of us will be back, hopefully, fighting spirits, and yeah, hopefully we can win it and see what happens, you know.
Indeed. But just before we do let you go, Rob, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you to live on the broadcast this evening?
So obviously, I'd like to thank all the sponsors that I've got, which is none, believe it or not. So, yeah. But anyways, obviously, shout out to the team, HSR, you know, Aiden as well. Again, this is a plea for Aiden to come back at some point. You know, we want you back in the team, mate. We want you to be driving for us, so hurry up and get back. And obviously, John, congratulations on, I believe, a third place. Don't quote me on that. I believe a third place, and then obviously Junior, who's on holiday drinking at the moment. So yeah, but yeah, that's all. And obviously the next gen lot, you know, Jamie and everyone that makes this possible. Yourself, Paul. You know, you do a great job. So keep up, man.
Oh, thank you, Rob. And indeed, it was a third place for John Higgins Senior in race number 3. So you're spot on with that. But I'm sure if Aiden's not listed, he will be listed soon. And hopefully we do see him return to the outfit from HSR. And well, look forward to seeing him potentially join you guys out on circuit in the future. But
I would love to get him. I would love to try and get him in at Monza. So we'll have to see what we can maybe do. See if he'll stop driving his real car and come and drive a simulated car.
Indeed. But with
Thank
that,
you,
Robert,
mate.
thank you very much for joining us in the interview room as always. Congratulations on your results today, and we look forward to seeing you out on circuit in a week's time.
Yeah. Let's hope for more prizes for HSR. But thank you, Paul. Cheers, mate.
No problem. Have a good evening.
You too, buddy. Cheers, man.
So hearing there from our final interviewee of the evening, Rob McGregor. And again, a very reflective Rob McGregor there in terms of things not quite being hooked up tonight and still trying to fathom what makes the car work, that Hyundai Elantra. And also discussing about the fact not able to take part in qualifying for race number 1 and therefore having to start from the back of the grid on our opening race and taking away potential opportunities. But I think the thing there to take most from Rob was when he was saying about that comparison where his teammates have achieved podiums and he's yet to achieve a podium and throwing away that potential podium in race number 3 with that mistake at turn number 1. But I think he'll look back at it and think to himself, okay, it wasn't today, but it's going to come, because we know that Rob, much like his teammates, has got the pace there to deliver the result, and it's the case he's just got to put the final pieces together. But you never know, it could be his day at Monza, given the fact we have typically seen the Elantra does have quite an edge on straight line speed, but we'll have to wait and confirm that in a week's time. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, that just about wraps up our post-round interviews and wraps up our show for today. Thank you very much for watching, and if you do want to know more about the Next Gen racing community in terms of all the series we run and what we do outside of our series and everything in between, then why not check out either our official website, that's nextgenracing.co.uk, or alternatively, if you're more of a Facebook user, you can always go to our official Facebook group, and that is facebook.com/groups/nextgenracing. But it is the case, ladies and gentlemen, that our drivers and their teams will be packing up their bags, packing up the equipment, and making their way through Europe to Italy for round number 8 in a week's time. We'll be heading to the Monza Grand Prix circuit on Thursday, the 29th of September, and well, with its straights, its heavy braking zones, and its chicanes in between, you can imagine the racing here will be very on the wire, and it will be battles on the brakes all the way through, plus the slipstream for good measure. Who can be the one to master the art of the draft in a week's time? We'll find out then. But until then, thank you for tuning in. We have been Next Gen Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Britain a Spit. And until next time, remember to stay safe, stay well, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.